in college football. I get it. Technically, I guess it is game week in college football. I got a couple of games coming up this weekend. I'm not going to call it that quite yet, though. Gamecock football not due until a week from Saturday, but we're getting closer and closer, Patrick. Are you feeling like we're getting closer and closer? Or is it still a little too far off for you as we sit here this morning?
No, I was going to go the complete opposite way. It is the first Monday. The first Monday that leads off a college football week. We're here. It's not like there's Power 5 football. It's not like it's just FCS games or something like that. We have a Power 5 football matchup this Saturday. Football is here.
All right, sell us. What do you got? What are you going to be sitting beside? You're going to be sitting there on your couch, on the edge of your couch, waiting to watch what this weekend?
Well, Nebraska and Illinois, I guess, is the headline game. But I mean, yeah, better be Power 5 football. They're both brutal programs right now, but it is Big Ten football. We're gonna have a big noon kickoff this Saturday at I guess noon. I guess it's gonna start at noon because I think it's a 1 p.m. game. Unless I'm looking at I think it's a 1 p.m. game. So we'll have big noon kickoff at noon, and then 1 p.m. on Fox, Nebraska and Illinois. Brett Bielema's first game in Illinois. Scott Frost potentially going into his last season at Nebraska. Who knows? They're a joke. Maybe this is the year they'll turn it around.
Mm-hmm. Selling it. You're selling it. I'll give you that. Gamecock football with scrimmage over the weekend. No public comments coming out after that to this point. Interesting reading Gamecock Central and Wes Mitchell saying that Zeb Nolan is a legit contender with Jason Brown to be starting quarterback in game number 1 if Luke Doty can't go. Patrick, what do you make of that wrinkle, if you will, coming out of the weekend? Again, completely unofficial, no official word out from Gamecock players or coaches after Saturday night scrimmage.
So he is more of a legit candidate than Colton Gauthier?
That is how I understood what I read from Gamecock Central and West Mitchell.
I don't know. I don't know how that's possible. If he heard that just means that Colton Gauthier is just not understanding the offense, right? That's what it has to be.
Well, that's not exactly how I translated. I translated in that you're talking about a couple of guys who have been in college 4 and 5 years, I think, in Jason Brown and Zeb Nolan. So I would expect them to have a lot better understanding of the offense to this point, even though Zeb Nolan just got on campus a couple of months ago. He did start for North Dakota State this past spring. Played at Iowa State before that. Gauthier is a true freshman. And, I think a lot of times it depends on the offense you play in college. I mean, in high school, that transition to college can be extra long for a lot of guys. And listening to Colton Gauthier the other day, you didn't get the sense that he was taking the long view. I certainly got that sense. And that there wasn't necessarily any pressure on his shoulders or any kind of sped up time clock, even with the Luke Doty injury, that he was going to be playing anytime in the immediate future. That's what I got out of his comments the other day, Patrick.
Yeah, but I got the same thing. But when you say long view, I thought that was just because he understands that Luke Doty is the leader of this team right now and is going to be the starting quarterback. Not, I'm not even close. So, playing week 1 isn't even a consideration for me. I didn't think it was, the coach who just stepped on the field for the first time last Thursday or whatever it was. Yeah, he's going to just jump right in and take my job. The guy that really has never done anything in college.
Played a little bit, played more than anybody else at this point in major college football. And to me, what I take away...
It's not major college football. He hasn't played more than Jason Brown.
Iowa State.
What did he play, though? Here, I'll pull up his stats.
Threw for 1,200 yards there.
Yeah, that's
not a ton for a career for sure, but it is. He lit up Oklahoma when Shane Beamer came and was playing against for 300 plus yards. His best game of his career, I think. So not a ton of major college football experience, but some. This reminds me of almost exactly how it went last year. The difference being that we thought Ryan Helinski was going to eventually take the job. And Colin Hill comes in as a transfer from Colorado State, knowing Mike Bobo's offense. And it seemed like it was about this time last year, Patrick, a couple of weeks before game number 1, where it started to become a reality that nope, it's going to be the other guy. This year, you obviously have the injury to Luke Doty that throws a wrinkle into things because it seems like he is set up to be not just the starting quarterback for the Gamecocks moving forward, but the face of the program. But with him still being out, not being 100% at this point, you got a couple of guys who have certainly never taken a snap as a Gamecock quarterback, but have taken very few, not just SEC snaps like Colin Hill, who had played at Colorado State and had put up a bunch of stats before coming in. But compared to that, these guys, both FCS guys most recently, and then Zeb Nolan with the Iowa State experience from several years ago. What do you got numbers-wise in front of you?
I'm confused by the ESPN game logs thing because it says 2019, and I can't tell if they were just logging. Like, what was the spring deal with North Dakota State?
They just played. They played in 2021 here in the spring.
Yeah, so I guess that's just not on ESPN. But I mean, in 2019, he played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. I guess in mop-up duty for Trey Lance. Never attempted more than 6 passes. Never threw for more than 36 yards. But if you go back to 2018, that was the year that he threw for 360 yards on 36 attempts against Oklahoma in a 37-27 loss. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then the week after that, he threw for 233 yards against Akron. And those were his only 100-yard games. I think he, in his, what was 2017, his freshman year? Redshirt freshman year?
Yep.
So he had 2 games in November where he threw for 263 yards and 180 yards. So he's thrown for over 100 yards 4 times in his career.
So those, 2017, 2018 stats from Iowa State and the rest of them from North Dakota State for Zeb Nolan, the guy who we talked about a bunch when the news happened, and he talked about all over the country, really made headlines across the country, coming in as a graduate assistant coach. And then at the news of the Luke Doty injury, he switching, making the transition from coaching staff to player. And now after the second scrimmage of the preseason, the word I'm reading from Wes Mitchell there in Gamecock Central, firmly in the competition, I think. He and Jason Brown, the transfer from FCS St. Francis, the top 2 guys to be starting quarterback if Luke Doty can't come back and play and be 100%. And also, I believe the way that read is exactly how Marcus Satterfield was saying it, the offensive coordinator last week, Patrick, is if Luke Doty's not going to be 100%, then he's not going to play. And very interesting situation in a lot of ways with FCS Eastern Illinois rolling in a week from Saturday night, a week after college football starts, according to you this morning.
Yeah, so
of game week.
I guess Zeb Nolan, I'm pulling up it from the North Dakota State website, threw for 721 yards last year is what I'm deducing, because on his ESPN splits, it has 2017, 2018 at Iowa State and North Dakota State, but his cumulative yards in the final tab are 721 yards more than if you add those up. So yeah, now I got it. He played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. Attempted over 20 passes 1 time against Southern Illinois, 159 yards, 1 touchdown, 54% completion percentage. That was the only game that he really threw a lot of passes.
Yeah, and as I understand it, I believe got beat out by a freshman towards the end of the spring season, and that's why he decided to move on to his coaching career and not go back, even though he had 1 more year of eligibility, and now right there in the mix for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
It's a crazy story for sure. To me, it's a crazy situation for Gamecock fans to hear about for a second straight year almost. I mean, Colin Hill's story was pretty nuts too, with 3 ACL tears. Coming with his coach from Colorado State and another teammate, Adam Prentice as well, coming back to his home state where he started as Shrine Bowl quarterback at Dorman back in the day, and then getting to be an SEC starting quarterback. And played, I think, serviceably a lot of times, but just never quite good enough to get over the hump there. And at the end of the season, when Mike Bobo took over, basically, took the reins, had the reins, and had the full decision-making process, he ended up putting the true freshman in there. College football is wild, and I love it. Morning to DC, Travis, Anthony as well. Hope you guys had some good weekends. Anything stand out to you over the weekend, Patrick? The Williamsport Major League Baseball game, kind of the national headliner, I think. I got to give baseball a little credit. They did the Field of Dreams game recently, doing this, keeping this tradition going that's relatively new in the last few years. They're trying. They are trying to regain some fans and to make baseball a little bit maybe newer or fresher to the next generation. I don't know if it's taking with a lot of people, though. What stood out to you? You get into the stuff over the weekend?
Kind of. I mean, the big news was Jamar Chase can't catch, apparently, and Penei Sewell's not that good. So the two guys that everyone felt like in the draft were basically can't misses. Struggled in the preseason. Trey Lance was pretty cold at the beginning yesterday and then really hot late. So and Kyle Shanahan, who I'm pretty sure the company line has been it's Jimmy G's job, has now said that he has not made a decision on who the starting quarterback is going to be. So it seems like a matter of time until they announce Trey Lance as the starter. But this is the first I've heard of the MLB playing a game in Williamsport. I didn't even know that happened this weekend. The Field of Dreams game was really hyped up, and I'm just now from Twitter noticing that what the Guardians and the Angels played. Is that right?
Exactly. You got the note that somebody hit 500 home runs over the weekend.
Yes,
right?
yes.
500.
Yeah, where do we Miguel Cabrera is a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? Easily.
Right.
Is he going to be the best? Is he the best hitter of this generation? I was looking at the all-time numbers, and only Albert Pujols has more career home runs than him of active players. It's insane that he's still 262 home runs away from Barry Bonds at first place. That is absurd because 500 is such a rare feat, and Barry Bonds is just that much further ahead of him. But it seems like getting into the top 20 is achievable for him. He's one of 10 guys to ever win the Triple Crown. I think also the Triple Crown should not be a league. It should be a Major League Baseball award, not a American League or National League award. I don't like that baseball does that.
Okay, especially being the interleague play these days. I can see that from your
perspective.
Because
no other sport does that. No other sport does that. It's not like, oh, you were the passing leader in the NFC. Oh, right. You scored the most points in the Eastern Conference in basketball. Like, no, only baseball breaks things up by league like that. And I feel like it almost makes the awards slightly less impressive, or 50% less impressive.
Well, I can see it from your perspective. Do you remember a time before interleague play? I'm guessing not.
No.
Right, your entire life, at 25 years old, there has been interleague play. So, to me, there was a distinct difference pre-interleague play and then everything else that's been after. And it seems like, I guess the awards never caught up, or they never made the adjustment. They just kept them the same. And, I mean, from a players union standpoint, I get it. It's basically double the awards. Why would you want them to go away and get some contract incentives and the whole thing? But yeah, I never thought about it quite like that, how no other league does that. Gives a separate Eastern Conference or Western Conference award, American League, National League award. What you're asking, though, is he the best hitter of his generation? It's him. That's the conversation, isn't it? You got anybody else in there?
No, I mean, that's what I was thinking. I don't know who else goes in there. When you talk about the best players, I mean, they're just, I guess, well-rounded players. Like Mike Trout is going to go down as one of, if not the best player of this generation overall, right? Just because he's a five-tool guy. And like Derek Jeter was the unanimous MVP selection, but it wasn't just being a great hitter, right? I guess it was just the leadership and being the continuity on like winning teams for every year of his career, basically. But in terms of just mashing, like Miguel Cabrera has been doing it as long as I can, and he's kind of been doing it as low key as you can for the numbers he puts up. Because has he been in a World Series? I don't even know.
I think one.
Was that one Tigers World Series? Yeah, with Scherzer and Verlander, that ridiculous pitching rotation. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. And he's 38 years old, as you're talking about the generation with Trout in there. Still a bunch of years separating him. And then I guess he's probably closer to Derek Jeter's age. And if we're the Major League Baseball conversation going to start the show this morning, or one of the things starting the show, the Atlanta Braves continue to be red hot. A 5-game lead now the Braves had after yesterday's 3-1 win over Baltimore. 9 straight wins for Atlanta. Incredible. That ties in with the Yankees' hottest win streak, hottest team in Major League Baseball right now. The turnaround that Atlanta has had since making the trade for Jock Peterson. I saw somebody put on social media that was the front office's message to the team, that they weren't giving up and had confidence in them and were going to make a run at the NL East. And man, they responded in a massive way. 9 straight wins now, 5-game lead over the Philadelphia Phillies, 7-game lead the New York Mets. The Braves 12 games over 500, having just gotten to 500 for the first time on the season several weeks ago.
Doesn't it feel like they're going to end up winning this thing by like 10 games?
Well, you mean the division? I'll give you
division,
that.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go with you got a little bit of a Washington Nationals feel from a couple of years ago when they absolutely flipped the switch from being a team to being world champions.
There are some really hot teams. I think the Yankees are really hot right now too, right? I think they've won nine straight. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know about the baseball as a whole, but just watching the NL East, I mean, everyone's trending down, and the Braves are trending way up. It feels like.
Anonymous texter that is checking out preseason football over the weekend. Trubisky revenge game, spanking Chicago. Bills are going to roll this year. Gene also weighing in on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. He said, "Big Red, take it easy on the new quarterback." LOL. Your take on Zeb Nolan and the Gamecock quarterback situation? Okay, you guys know Patrick. Excuse me. Patrick comes in hot. He does not mess around. Well, there's no warm up period on a Monday morning. Roll the Patrick.
This actually Zeb Nolan situation is kind of the perfect situation to just judge a person on whether they're an optimist or a pessimist. Because if you just tell a person, yeah, South Carolina could potentially start a guy who came over here a couple of weeks ago as a coach. Their starting quarterback got hurt, so they decided to just make him a player, and then he's going to get the starting job for week 1. Half the people are like, oh, what an incredible plot for a movie. He's probably just going to take the starting job, win the national championship, and go down in Gamecock history forever. And then the other people are like, how is this possible? We're an SEC team, and we're about to start a coach who didn't even win the job at North Dakota State last year? Okay, yeah, this is going to go well.
So I'm guessing you're in that second category. That's what I'm hearing.
I'm in the category that I can't imagine. It's hard for me to believe that he's actually in the running to win the job. If Jason Brown is not the starter week 1, or Colton Gauthier, if either of them are not the starter when Luke Doty's out, then my mind will just be blown.
That's strong. I like it. That's how we're starting off the week. Who knows where the rest of the program will go? Bill Gunter taking a couple of days off here in August to get ready to be 100% for football season when it kicks off in its entirety, starting next week. Not in my opinion, that's reality. But Patrick's going with the first game week for college football. Illinois, Nebraska got you pumped up, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I just don't know about any other teams. I mean, Nebraska or Hawaii at UCLA could be a fun game. It's a noon kickoff there. I don't know about Hawaii, but they usually are pretty fun. I think they still run the air raid over there, and UCLA has, I guess, a little bit of hype going into this season. UConn, Fresno State does nothing for me. Southern Utah, San Jose State does nothing for me. UTEP and New Mexico State does nothing for me. But a Power 5 Big Ten matchup, and then a Power 5 team against Hawaii, who usually lights up the scoreboard, I can buy into both of those games.
All right, Chip Kelly with plenty of pressure on him being on the hot seat. I think UCLA longest losing season stretch since the 60s, maybe, or maybe even longer than that. The last few seasons under Chip Kelly that it just hadn't worked out. So that's the interesting part of the UCLA equation.
And it'll just be a full-on football Saturday because Nebraska, Illinois won. You watch the end of that, then you put on Hawaii and UCLA 3:30, and then at 6 o'clock, Washington versus the Ravens, Beltway battle, the preseason finale. The Ravens are trying to go 20 straight preseason wins. They haven't lost a preseason game since 2015, and they've got 19 in a row right now. It's kind of an absurd stat, and people don't know how to think about it. Like, is it actually impressive? Not kind of, because the preseason doesn't matter, but actually getting them to care enough, like the 90th guy on the roster getting in and caring enough and playing well enough to win 20 straight preseason games is kind of impressive.
They looked really good on Saturday night in Charlotte against the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers offense basically non-existent in that thing. It wasn't as bad as the Eagles, I guess, getting whipped and shut out on Thursday night by the Patriots, 35-0, but 20-3 the final score for the Ravens over the Carolina Panthers. I feel like that's a Crash Davis stat he just gave us. Most home runs in minor league history and most consecutive preseason wins by the Baltimore Ravens. That is a weird.
But at least they're
stat.
a good team too. It's not like the Browns just win every preseason game and then go winless. I think the Lions went undefeated in the preseason the year they went over.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. Shi Smith, by the way, for the Carolina Panthers on Saturday, thrown out a bunch 6 times, ended up with 2 catches and 35 yards in that game with the Ravens again, where the Panthers offense struggled. Will Grier looked okay, I think, and maybe solidified himself as the backup quarterback, going 11 out of 14 for 144 yards, didn't throw an interception. And then P.J. Walker came in after that and just completely ineffective. Sam Darnold only throwing 2 passes in limited duty to begin there. So there's your big preseason update from the NFL. We'll get back into the Gamecock football conversation. 803-404-6100 is the number into the program. Could it be Zeb Noland, starting quarterback, game number 1 for the Gamecocks, coming up 1 week from Saturday. Like Sonny pointed out, 12 days away from Gamecock football. Kicking off, listening to the early game here. It's 107.5 The Game. What'd you get into on the weekend, man?
Saturday was a big day. I got off work, left at 8, came home, showered, woke up, went to pick the girlfriend up from the airport, and then moved her until like 3 or 4. So Saturday was just a moving day.
Wait a minute. I thought she had moved her flight up to Friday night, no?
She did. She was going to, but like she was freaking out about that decision the whole time. Like, should I take off work in my first 2 weeks? And
right.
Once Polly started walking around, she's like, I told her, don't even worry about it. You're probably in the clear now. Just work and keep your normal flight. Don't pay extra, change it, and it'll be fine. So she did not move it up. And then left Sunday morning, and Sunday I just slept 2 days worth of sleep because I didn't sleep going to Saturday.
So you don't leave us hanging. How's Polly?
She's good. Yeah, she after the show Friday, I took her out, and like to go to the bathroom, she needed to put that leg down a little bit, and I think applied a little pressure for the first time and realized that she's kind of okay. So she limped around a little bit on the 4th leg. Then later in the day, she started walking, but wouldn't run or jump. And then by the end of the day, after she slept all day, basically, she started running around a little bit. And the next day, I think she woke up and was basically 100%. So all good now.
Sounds like she might have been playing it up for the camera.
She might have been. I don't know.
Is she a soccer dog? Is that a soccer dog? Does your girlfriend have a soccer dog? Sounds like she might have a soccer dog.
She is very dramatic. She's very loud. She was very confused yesterday when all of her things were being moved out of the house, or on Saturday when all of her things were being moved out of the house into a van. I don't know if she's figured out that she moved yet. It's going to be a tough change for her, though, going from having a fenced-in backyard that she can just go out whenever she wants to being in an apartment where she has no room to work with and has to be walked outside.
Oh, for sure.
It's a tough adjustment. And not having another dog when she's at home during work all day. Probably going to be pretty bored.
Well, since we did the show last, we got a call from my 8-year-old school almost as soon as the show was over on Friday that we had to go pick him up because someone in his class had tested positive and his class was in quarantine. And then the next day, got the message that the 6-year-old's class is also in the same situation. And so now my
Yeah.
kids at home for the next week doing school virtually.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So the whole school is not virtual, but both of their classes are virtual?
Yep.
Interesting. That's going to be a whole year thing probably, right?
That's what weird thing was going to happen last year, man. So I'm reading. Oh, no. That's hilarious. Travis just sent this video to me. Oh, Travis, that stinks too, man. Was that Apin, I'm guessing? It was at airport, and it didn't happen on Friday night. I saw the video he just sent was pretty good. Kid was going to publicly commit to Oregon, and they're doing the pre-interview with the dad. That I know he's going to represent Oregon really well. He hadn't even made the announcement yet.
Wait, where's this video?
Travis sent it to me. It is at Oregon Miller is the Twitter account. Jaleel Tucker is the dude's name.
Oh, I see it.
You're watching it now.
That's a tough break. Is this kid from the state of Oregon? They could have played it off. Nope. From California. It did take all of the gas out of his commitment. He just said, yeah, for the next couple of years, I'll be attending University of Oregon. Thankfully, they laughed it off.
Poor kid.
It is insanely foggy outside right now.
Foggy?
Yeah, I can't even see the house next to me.
Huh.
I thought it was when I walked outside briefly this morning just to throw trash out, and then saw a dense fog advisory, and it is for sure dense. Be careful driving to work.
I'm a slacker and didn't even send Janice link.
The only thing I can see is the street light.
He's probably enjoying some, actually.
Sounds like we're back.
Yeah. Just starting off your week, if you're like me, maybe you're a bit of a procrastinator. Not necessarily going to plan things weeks and weeks ahead of time with your schedule, especially with the way things change these days. Well, you're to the point where you can go ahead and sign up for our 14th anniversary golf tournament presented by Integrated Media. It's this Friday, 10 o'clock. Charwood Golf Club is the place. Panera Breakfast, Little Pig's Lunch, going to raise some money for Camp Cole. You can sign up as an individual or as a 4-person captain's choice team. Just give Charwood a call, 803-755-2000. We're going to give away a trip to Kiowa for our winning team. Raffle off a pair of tickets to the Gamecock season opener against Eastern Illinois. And a hole-in-one will get you $10,000 on our signature hold there, sponsored by Buford Lending. Have some trophies provided by the Trophy and Award Center over in Lexington. Again, that's our 14th anniversary 1075 The Game Golf Tournament. This Friday, 10 a.m., Charwood Golf Club, their number where you can call to sign up, 755-2000. All right, is the Big Ten, are the Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12 all going to come together to form an alliance? It's like Survivor. Who talks like that in real life? No one. To basically join forces to try to compete with the SEC, the big bad version of the SEC, the bigger and badder version of the SEC with Oklahoma and Texas coming in. This is the news that's coming out over the weekend, and that they're exploring the alliance. Another word that people don't use in real conversation. Explore. What do you think, Patrick? Do you feel like we're going to see this with the new television contracts, that these conferences are going to kind of look over at each other and say, hey, we should probably do something to make more money, or do at least give the appearance of being a little bit stronger now that you're dealing with a new and improved, what was already the dominant conference in the country in the SEC, and then you add in Oklahoma and Texas?
I mean, I don't even understand what they can do to be like an alliance. They're not saying, hey, we'll take Oregon and Southern Cal, you give us Ohio State, Michigan, and then Clemson and Florida State, and we'll make our own super conference back. They're not doing that. They're just saying they're going to team up and negotiate their television contracts together, or always vote on kind of a straight line on whatever issues there are. It seems like it doesn't matter at all. Like, sure, if you guys team up and get a better contract than you would individually, okay, that's fine. The SEC's still going to make more money, and even if they don't, does it matter? I mean, the SEC still has the better teams. They have the premier programs. The SEC doesn't care if it's about voting. The SEC doesn't care if there's a 4-team college football playoff. They've never been left out. They don't care if it's a 12-team college football playoff, because then they'll put 4 or 5 teams in the college football playoff. Like, I don't see anything that the Big Ten, ACC, and Pac-12 can team up to do that will actually hurt the SEC. Maybe it'll stop one of those conferences from getting completely left behind. Maybe the Pac-12 won't get screwed in the TV rights deals, but that was their own mess that they made. So maybe this will help them, but it's not going to catch them up to the SEC in any regard. I just don't understand what it means. They're just scared of the SEC and going to do whatever they can to not be little brother of all of college football. I don't get it, really.
Well, the news is coming out from Penn State's athletic director speaking on Saturday, talking about the Big Ten feels like it's in a really good place, and mentioning that 40% of the Association of American Universities, which I guess it's just a group of leading research schools, is within the Pac-12 and the Big Ten and the ACC, and saying that the money, I feel like, is what I was hearing from the AD. From a monetary standpoint, there's not a whole lot that an alliance would do here. But apparently they're thinking of something else and something bigger, allegedly. The quote that ends the article, I don't think this is going to be nibbling at the edges. I think it's going to be bold. I hope I don't have to retract that statement. The question is, like you're saying, Patrick, what would be bold here? What is it? That you form one conference between all three of them? That would be bold. That would be bold. Outside of that, I can't think of much, if anything.
Unless there's some sort of deal where they refuse to play SEC teams, like, I don't know how they could do this with scheduling, just all team up as a group and say, we're not going to schedule non-conference games with the Southeastern Conference. We're not going to – I don't know what they could do with bowl games, say, like, yeah, we're going to make more exclusive bowl games and not play the SEC teams. But from a competitive on-the-field perspective, there's no rule that would not hurt the SEC. I mean, somebody just texted in, was it Neil, saying it's about voting together in order to keep the SEC from trying to make the moves that only benefit it. Well, it doesn't matter. If there's a 14 playoff, like, all I can think of is the playoff in this regard. And no matter what, the SEC is going to be represented. They're going to be represented more than any other conference. And from a competitive standpoint, what can you possibly do to keep the SEC from being the dominant conference when they've got Alabama, Georgia, Florida, now they've got Texas and Oklahoma? Like, they're always going to be in the mix in a big way.
Randy, our resident LSU fan, says the Alliance can decide to only play their out-of-conference games versus each other and not with the SEC to create more value for new TV deals. If you say so. I mean, that's going to create more value. Right. An Ohio State Southern Cal matchup instead of an Ohio State Alabama non-conference matchup, or Florida State versus Washington, Florida State versus Michigan, I guess, instead of Florida State versus LSU or something like that. I guess I could see that. But is that really
going to help them? Yeah.
Right. I mean, is the Alliance going to be not the SEC? Is that what they're going to call each other? It just comes across as kind of petty and sour grapes to me. And who's to stop the SEC from just increasing conference games per year? And I think then that increases the SEC value that much more. I would think if you're going to play 9, I think is going to be inevitable. If you go more than that, that would be a bold move for the SEC. I don't feel like you're having a lot to offer there, these other teams. And don't you come off as awfully weak if, for our perspective here in South Carolina, if the ACC, if Clemson says, hey, South Carolina, we're not going to play you anymore because we have an alliance now.
Right. You can't do that. You can't get rid of Florida State. You can't get rid of Georgia Tech. Like, you can't just
Patrick,
those
but years ago you would have said you can't get rid of Texas A&M in Texas. And that happened. And the BC and the Big 12 certainly playing a role in that, conference affiliation playing a role in that. To me, since I've seen that, I'm not taking anything off the table. I mean, we saw a season last year where South Carolina and Clemson didn't play. It just happened. It would not shock me if, especially with all the money involved, if something like this were to happen. But the question becomes, is that a good move for these other conferences? And I'm financially, maybe, and maybe from a power standpoint, it does. What I've seen, I think this time last year again, I feel like I came in today. What's today's date? There, the 23rd, August 23rd, 2021. And in a lot of ways, we're sitting in August 2020, talking about a Gamecock quarterback competition that we didn't maybe expect at this point, with Zeb Nolan, according to Gamecock Central, being right there in the mix with Jason Brown to start game number 1 if Luke Doty's not healthy. Last year it was Colin Hill kind of sneaking up and taking the job from Ryan Helinski, who I think most Gamecock fans logically, rationally thought was just going to keep the job after playing in his true freshman season. Now we're talking about realignment in a lot of ways, or what the ACC can do. This time last year we were talking about, hey, the Big Ten's already canceled their season. What's everybody else going to do? SEC, why aren't they making a decision? What's taking Greg Sankey so long? Why aren't we hearing things? What last year showed me was that conference affiliations in major college football especially were the only thing that mattered. It wasn't the ACC talking to the SEC. When the ACC came out, I thought they had solved the problem, right? They left the door open for another one non-conference game. I thought that was going to keep that South Carolina Clemson game going. But the SEC's obviously proved that they didn't care about it, and they set conference only. The Big Ten was just seemingly lost in all of this, and behind everyone, they came out and said, nope, we're canceling the season, and Pac-12 with them and the whole thing, and then had to go back on that. So it was a mess last year. I feel like it's a mess in a different way this year, especially for those other conferences kind of scrambling to keep up or to respond to the Oklahoma and Texas news. And this isn't even counting the Big 12 that's just sitting there with 8 members left, and who knows what's going to happen to them. They're not even mentioned in this possible alliance because I don't think anyone thinks they're going to survive this thing from the outside looking in.
They're definitely not. I don't know what's going to happen there, but Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, I was just pulling up Clemson's future schedules. I mean, they have obviously the Georgia game this year. They've got a future scheduled game with LSU. They've got Georgia back on the schedule again in like 2030. I think they've got Oklahoma on there. So I'm just thinking, like, in the recruiting pitch, that's just a cool thing to say. Clemson, I mean, they're doing the color rush thing with Georgia this year, and that's going to be a primetime game in an NFL stadium, and it's going to be a great recruiting tool, especially if Clemson can whoop up on Georgia. And they'll say, yeah, look, we play the biggest, baddest SEC teams, and we beat them. But you're just going to take those guys off the schedule and then say, yeah, come to Clemson. You'll only get to play ACC teams. You'll put up big numbers, and no one will watch your games. Like, is that what you're doing here? It doesn't.
No, what they could do,
Ohio, we're going to play Ohio State instead of.
Theoretically, you could rotate through some big boys in the Big Ten, right? That would be something. You put Southern Cal on the schedule. That would be something. That would replace Georgia.
Or they'll just say, hey, we're going to put you against Arizona State. Ohio State's going to play Wake Forest. And who's even another? Southern Cal's going to play Boston College because they don't want their big dogs beating each other.
Yeah, that would be a clear disaster that I would think they would be smart enough to avoid. But who knows at this point? The Oklahoma-Texas news, I feel like, still just blindsiding so many others in major college sports that they're talking about everything at this point. And again, this was coming off of some comments from Saturday, and the Penn State athletic director talking about the idea of those three conferences, Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12, joining forces. 803-404-6100. If you would like to join us, you can call or text here. It's the early game. It's 107.5 The Game. Morning, RL. Oh, there ain't no doubt about that, Travis. That reminds me of the "This is not a democracy" press conference that Nick Saban had over the weekend.
Yeah, what did Julio Billings do?
Apparently, yeah, it is. Not doing what Saban expects him to do is how I understood it.
I mean, he's for sure gonna start. I mean, he's supposed to be a first-round pick or a very high pick.
I think that was the usual on the schedule preseason press conference that Nick Saban has to make a statement to his team and make sure that everybody realizes they're not at any other program in the country except the one program that can get away with being like that in Alabama.
Right. He might be the best tight end in the country. Gamecock Larry has the full quarterback rotation figured out.
Saw that. Good to know, huh?
Guess they're all going to play. All right, so we've got cut down day is a week from tomorrow. So week 0, week 1, NFL the next weekend. Yeah. So we're here. I'm actually not sure how much football I'll be able to watch next weekend because I think the plan is I'm going to Greenwood on Saturday morning to look at a couple houses with my sister because my parents were just down here and they just sold their house yesterday.
Wow.
2 days ago.
They're ready, huh?
So they are ready to go. Yeah.
Good for them. Do they have an interim plan?
Well, they're able to like stay there for a couple more months.
Perfect.
While they kind of figure everything out.
That sounds ideal.
Yeah, but I don't think just because they have the time, they want to use all of it. They want to get it figured out as soon as possible. So hopefully we'll go up there on Saturday and really kind of figure something out.
You think that'll be the landing spot?
Seems like it, most likely. I mean, if it happens quickly, then that will be the landing spot. But I think they're keeping their options open because my mom doesn't have a job yet or hasn't even gotten officially licensed. So Dad's remote now, so he can do whatever.
Well, Griner took a picture with Cabrera. See that on social media?
Did see that. Has he been on the Tigers all year?
No, mostly in the minors. He came in that game, though, caught a little late. One pinch hit or one hitting appearance and walked.
It's been a couple years now that he's just been up and down, up and down, up and down. What's that AAA affiliate?
We're coming back in.
Grand Rapids, maybe? I think it's Grand Rapids.
So he's going from.
All right, Jen, we'll get Gamecock Larry in here.
Okay. You guys are up.
Clemson fans Neil and Harry didn't appreciate how we were speaking about the possible ACC, Pac-12, or Big Ten alliance. Neil says, spoken like a true homer, SEC homer, Tim. And Harry says Clemson's strength of schedule would go way up with the deletion of South Carolina from their schedule. Comments, I think, from the Clemson.
Good one.
Let's go to the other side. Well,
actually pulling for Clemson, I think, in the season opener. Surprisingly, he let us know the other day on the Love Chevy phone lines. Our favorite 87-year-old caller, Gamecock Larry, in at 803-404-6100. Good morning, sir. How you doing this Monday morning, Larry?
Doing just fine. I ain't worried about Clemson or Georgia. I'll tell you what, I don't know. Clemson, chicken farm, tater tillers and all that, I ain't worried about them. Especially old Clemson Sean. Got to throw it out there at them. But we ain't going to see Luke Doty or DK in the first game of the season. The starting rotation is going to be Zeb, Jason, CG. They got the, what they call them in the walk-on. That's going to be the starting rotation if we don't get any more injuries. But we're not going to see Doty or DK, either one in the first game. Now, after the first game, I'll call you back week after next and tell you who's going to be the starting quarterback in the second game.
Wait a second.
That's about all I got to.
Gamecock Larry, are you saying we're going to see all four Carolina quarterbacks in that rotation?
No.
Okay, you're just saying
I'll
that's
tell you what,
yes,
sir, we may see all four of them. But I'm going to tell you this guy, what I heard, and I ain't seen none of it, but what I heard, he got, well, I guess he don't have the most experience, but he's the best quarterback. Oh, Zeb's gonna show us. We gonna have the 1-2 punch, 1-2-3 punch when Doty do come back. We're gonna be the surprise team in. We're gonna be the surprise team in the SEC.
Did you make it out to Steel Hands in the Gamecock Central preseason kickoff tournament on Friday night, Larry?
Yes, sir. And I've seen that old Gamecock Central. What's his name? What's that young man's name?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We got Wes and Chris and Brian over there.
Wes
45.
Smith yesterday, and he's supposed to call me. And I'm waiting for him to call me. He's going to set me up with a subscription. I've been trying to get a subscription,
Nice.
and he's going to set me up with that. But I've been trying to get on this
30.
thing you guys got going in the morning. I'm going to buy me one of them smart $1,000 smartphones and all that, so I can sit up where I can see y'all's pretty faces in the morning when I talk to you.
Gamecock
And
Larry,
you're going to have to tell
15.
yes, sir.
you get in on the video stream. We will send you the link every morning, and you can sit in with your face on with us. Sound good? Deal?
5.
How do I get on the video screen? That's what
Great
I don't
question.
understand. I'm an old man. I don't know what Facebook. I don't know
Total
what.
coverage right here. 107.5
There.
Cumulus Station.
That was the perfect way for that
That was
to end. That was the
amazing.
perfect way for that call to end.
Sorry, Jen, you're on mute there if you're talking at
I
us.
do wonder how long Gamecock Larry continues talking when he gets played out like that, before he realizes that we've gone to a break.
Yeah. Jen, were you talking to us? You're on mute there.
Yeah, I was trying to talk to Larry, but he hung up.
So he didn't go too long, Patrick. I can just see him going and going and going.
And I felt bad. I'm like,
How many times do you think Gamecock Larry has been played off at the end of an hour?
I would argue maybe not enough. Say a couple of dozen for sure.
I think it's probably like one in every
Once a
one in
week.
every yeah,
Once
one
every
in
2
every
weeks.
4 or 5 calls ends in him
Yeah.
being played off at the end of an hour.
Anthony's all in on the video. We will be giving away a pair of tickets at the golf tournament there, Sonny. But I mean, they are $18.01, I think you can get a ticket for through USC. GamecocksOnline.com/tickets. So that's the thing about having Eastern Illinois on the schedule. They do not jack the ticket price up.
South Carolina families meet their insurance needs for over 50 years. We can help you meet your needs as well by providing all
Has anyone ever set up a Survivor League or a Survivor Pool
operated agencies.
on the live stream? Need to do a little research on that, because that would be the ideal morning show live stream competition, I think.
Agreed.
Come see the difference Giles Road
Maybe we can figure something out to give away for the winner of that. When was the last time there was this much excitement for an opening game? 2 years
2
ago?
seasons ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago. Tennessee, right?
I was 100 times more excited for the North Carolina game in Charlotte than I am for the Eastern Illinois game.
Was that 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And that Tennessee opener, I think, from a couple of years ago, there's a ton of excitement too, Waddy. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. There will always be excitement about Gamecock football.
That was last year.
That was just last year, the Tennessee opener?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crap. What was the year before? The year before wasn't
North
North
Carolina.
Carolina. Was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, because last year was Winsky's sophomore year. It was Jake Bentley's senior year 2 years
Oh,
ago.
wow.
Yeah. Because Colin Hill started that Tennessee game.
And remember,
didn't play-
too, Waddy,
didn't-
last
Colin Hill
year,
didn't play bad, but Rico Dowdle got hit in the hands, and Henry Toto recovered it for a touchdown, or picked it up and scooped and scored it.
Dowdle didn't play for the Gamecocks last year.
Oh, wait, what? No, it wasn't Rico Dowdle. Who threw? Oh, wait, the interception was right in the middle? Who did? Didn't we say it wasn't Colin Hill's fault throwing that pick six?
Yeah.
Who dropped it?
It had to be who? It wasn't Kevin Harris, was it? Wasn't it Fenwick, maybe?
Might have been Fenwick. I just remember him throwing a pick six and us saying, yeah, well, Colin Hill wasn't that bad in that game.
Yeah, you talk about a guy that we just haven't talked about at all since last year. Going into last year, Fenwick was and then played pretty well at times. And now, where did he transfer? Is it Washington State?
That sounds right.
somewhere out west. Yeah, last year too. Remember, we're
Oregon
sitting in the
State.
middle of Oregon State. We're sitting in the middle of a pandemic. Oregon football, pretty amazing.
All right, I'm looking at this pick six. Let's see what happened here.
You're right. I remember now. Jeremy Pruitt's big win that led him to only get.
Oh, it was Shi Smith.
Was it?
Yeah, ball. Let's see. Yeah, it was like slightly behind. It was thrown behind Shi Smith, so it hit his back, his front shoulder. He was going this way, hit this shoulder right into Toto's hands, and he took it back for 6.
No, Josh. No talk after the scrimmage. I've got to look up the schedule here, but nobody. I think Beamer is expected to talk tomorrow and kind of get into his weekly press conference routine. It'll be Tuesdays at 1. I think. Double check that. A press release or anything. Did see. I thought it was hilarious that our guy on with Jay and Tommy on Thursday, Pete Limbo, the associate head coach, put out the tweet, got better in all 3 phases tonight. And that got a ton of likes. So, yeah, no practice yesterday, an off day scheduled today, and then weekly press conference for Shane tomorrow at 1 with some requested players as well. Then we got Satterfield and Clayton White again on Wednesday. How about that?
Wow.
And then we'll have them again next Wednesday. Amazing. What a concept. So be concerned about what, Josh? That he didn't talk? He wasn't scheduled to talk. And yes, if you're a Gamecock fan, you should always be concerned on August 23rd.
I'm just going back at all South Carolina's Week 1 games, not to keep harping on Waddy's text. It's been a while since there was a game less hyped than this first one against Eastern Illinois.
No, it's not that because it's the full capacity, the start of the Shane Beamer era. You can sell
I
it.
guess.
But
I
the matchup, for sure.
if I was given $10 and a free ticket, I wouldn't go to this game because I want to watch that at the same time as the Clemson-Georgia game. I hate that they're going at the same time. I think it'll be electric for the first quarter, and then it'll be 21-0, and people will start filing out and ready to go party in the parking lot and watch the end of the Clemson-Georgia game. What was the estimate on? Did we put in guesses on capacity for Week 1?
Oh, I haven't thrown mine
Or how
out
many
there.
people are going to be there?
We're back in
Attendance
the
for Week
intro.
1, not capacity.
Good question.
Disrupt.
Getting closer and closer to football. Football over the weekend in various capacities. High school football kicking off around the state of South Carolina. NFL exhibition games continuing. And this weekend, it's a few other college football kickoffs. Why does college football do this, by the way, Pash? Why can't – to me, this is classic college football that you just can't all get together and say, hey, this is the week we're all going to start, that some programs always have to branch out and be those teams. Like, I guess when you're Illinois and Nebraska at this point, you got to do something to try to differentiate yourself, or maybe throw in the big smoke screen and not pay attention to the year in and year out bad seasons. So I guess I get it. And then the other handful of games, UCLA and Hawaii. Hawaii is always different. Maybe this is kind of a Hawaii tradition that you get that week 0 game or whatever it is. It just annoys me. Anything that says week 0 is really annoying.
I don't really get it either, just because I don't necessarily understand how it's decided who gets to play and why they decide. I mean, sure, for Nebraska and Illinois, if they were playing in week 1, that would be one of the lower rated games on the Power 5 slate, I guess. So they want the attention of being the only people playing. But if it's a ESPN decision or a network decision, like, wouldn't it be better to play this Georgia-Clemson game in week 0 and just say all eyes in the football world are going to be on Charlotte, North Carolina for a top 5 matchup, and then you don't have to worry about South Carolina fans being in Williams-Brice Stadium, not being able to watch that game. You don't have to worry about everyone watching their own team. They can just only focus on one of the best games that college football is going to have to offer this year. Wouldn't that be better for ratings? Just get a massive number in week 0 and then say, yeah, here you go. We just gave you maybe the best game of the year before the season's even started. Now you're ready for football. Let's rock.
Like, wouldn't that make sense to put Clemson, Georgia, Thursday night, September 2nd?
Yeah.
And call it college football kickoff, right? Have game day there, the whole thing. Everybody watches that one game, a lot like the NFL has their first Thursday night game. And then you move on to the first full Saturday, a couple of days later. I don't understand why. The fact that just doesn't happen. College football never happens that cleanly, I feel like.
No.
Steve Spurrier and South Carolina had it going for multiple years, being a Thursday night kickoff to the season a lot of times. And I think it certainly helped from exposure standpoint, but it never was the marquee game in the country that everybody was pointing to and saying, wow, this thing's going to really get us going. It just reminds me of kind of the dysfunction level of college football. Why it's another reason that we love it, I think, and why we can talk about it 365 days a year is that you got the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 over the weekend. The Penn State athletic director coming out on Saturday talking about a possible alliance between the conferences and what exactly it does. And even after hearing those comments, we're not sure what exactly it'll do, except maybe allow them to gang up and say, hey, we're not going to play SEC teams anymore. Not going to do it. This Oklahoma and Texas thing, no more. So if we only play each other in marquee non-conference games, that will be good for all of us. Randy's theory is that they're doing this to try to narrow the gap, keep the gap from getting too wide between the SEC and other conferences. From the Big Ten's perspective, they don't have to really worry about that right now. They're at the top. I think they made more money than anybody. But with renegotiations coming up with TV contracts, I think this is where they're at. And that's what Randy mentions try to renegotiate better TV money. And then if the SEC would most likely go into 9 or 10 conference games, would leave them no other marquee matchups outside of conference. I think we're in agreement, especially in South Carolina, that you don't want to see the Clemson South Carolina game go away. I think most of us never thought we would see it. We just saw it last year. So Patrick, when you say that can't happen, when Georgia Tech, that has to happen, I just don't believe that anymore. From what I've seen in college football with Texas A&M disappearing, and last year we saw no Clemson in South Carolina, and the world kept moving forward. So I think everything is on the table right now in these discussions, especially from conferences who feel jaded by this SEC news. We're not even talking about Big 12, which isn't even invited to this alliance because they're not going to be working.
But so I guess Ohio State doesn't have to worry about this because their rival is a Big Ten team, so that Michigan game will always be played. But for Clemson, if it's Clemson's AD voting on this, what possible reason would he have to say, yeah, you know what, let's side with the rest of the Big Ten and Pac-12 when we are arguably the kings of college football right now, right there with Alabama, and why would we get rid of the South Carolina game on our schedule for the sake of teaming up with the Pac-12 and Big Ten? All it is us whooping our in-state rival every single year, showing how large the gap is every year. The Gamecock fans think that it's closing. We just crush them and prove our domination in this state, even though we don't already need to. Like, what why would they ever do that? They love the South Carolina game right now.
To me, the only positive I can see from that standpoint is, first of all, if the money for the new TV contract would be right. And then secondly, if they could replace a long-standing rivalry game with another marquee opponent in one of those other conferences. You can replace South Carolina with Michigan or Ohio State. I think you would have to have that guarantee from the Clemson standpoint to get on board. But
still, is
as you
that
were-
better? Is it better to say, yeah, we'll crush Michigan instead of South Carolina? I mean, it's going to be every eye in the state of South Carolina is going to be on that South Carolina Clemson game. If there's any time, Clemson recruits nationally now, so it's not a huge deal for them. But if there is a kid in the state of South Carolina that Clemson wants, they can just crush South Carolina and be like, look, you really want to go there? We're Clemson. We're the best team in the country. Like, wouldn't it help them in that way more than no matter really who they play?
I'm just trying to look at this from a zoomed out point. And as you were talking about, just the way that you stated what would be the advantage for Clemson, I think is the way that college football, college sports in general, those conferences, it's the reasons why the SEC is so rare getting unanimous votes, right? Because your take right there is the exact same take that Texas A&M had to have about Texas coming to the SEC, right? How's that going to help Texas A&M? It doesn't at all. And it massively hurts them. I think it gets rid of their whole sales pitch of, hey, we're the only Texas team in the SEC. Come play in the best conference. Come play with us instead of somebody else. And yet, Texas A&M got to the point where they were near riot, it seemed like, when the news first came out, to the point of voting for it when the SEC put up the vote.
Yeah.
And I don't think these other conferences have the strength of leadership, or whatever you want to say it, right? The persuasive powers within the group to make this thing happen. It would take a lot of money, I think, to balance that out. And these school presidents and athletic directors saying, well, I wasn't going to vote for it for an extra, blank $1 million a year, but now that it's a different number in there, maybe you've changed our mind.
And maybe it's just Clemson and Ohio State that are saying they're kind of being forced to do this. They're just looking around their conference being like, why couldn't any of you guys be worth anything? Like, this is not a problem for us. We're holding up our end of the bargain. We're competing for national championships every year, and none of you guys are doing anything to help us. So now we've got to take off these games from our schedule that we really want to play, but for the sake of you guys being so bad, and we got to make our money somehow. So they'll just be like unwilling or uncooperative yes votes just for the sake of being team players, even though they really wish this wasn't happening. I mean, it's really just them and everyone else. Like, they're in leagues of their own atop their conferences and have been for a very long time.
And that's why the likelihood of this alliance thing going down is doubtful. I think it's the best way to put it in my mind.
Or it might just be underwhelming. Like, there might be some sort of alliance, but it's just not what they've hyped it up to be. And realistically, it's not going to change anything about the landscape of college football.
I think they know that it needs to be notable, with Oklahoma and Texas on the other side of these things, and the Penn State AD basically saying as much over the weekend, but also adding, hoping that they don't have to eat their words or retract the statement. So not a ton of confidence there. Nothing has changed with these other conferences, and I am doubtful, again, that they're going to be able to do anything to combat in any meaningful way the addition of Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. But what that has to do with this year is pretty much nothing when it comes to college football, and that is more of a down the road look at it from a much more important, timely standpoint. Over the weekend, Gamecock football with its last full scrimmage, doing it Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium. Shane Beamer did not speak after that scrimmage. No real details coming out. Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central, reporting that Zeb Nolan, the former graduate assistant coach turned player recently, is a legit option and is legitimately competing with St. Francis transfer quarterback Jason Brown to get that would be number 2 spot on the depth chart behind Luke Doty but to possibly get the start in the season opener if Doty is not ready to go from a health standpoint, dealing with the mid-foot sprain, and reiterating kind of what Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, told us the last time he spoke publicly, that they're not going to do anything that would put Luke Doty's health in jeopardy. Would only put him out there if he's 100%. So what we continue to get from the Gamecock coaching staff will be very interesting this week. Shane Beamer set to speak tomorrow in a press conference, and several players will be speaking publicly tomorrow. Today is a day off, and no word coming out of South Carolina, or at least no scheduled word coming out. So, Patrick, again, I think your initial impression was you're very surprised that this is the reality, if this is reality, that Zeb Nolan is a legit contender to be the starting quarterback at Carolina. For those of you unfamiliar, again, Patrick looked up the stats and most recently started at North Dakota State this past spring, didn't end the season as a starter, and that's why he basically thought his college football playing career was at an end and wanted to kind of transition to the graduate assistant role and get into coaching. But before North Dakota State for a couple of years, was at Iowa State to start his career, and played, how many games did you get in there? A handful of games, maybe a little bit more than a handful of games. And his most notable game came against Shane Beamer in Oklahoma, where he threw for 360 yards, I think, in that game, a couple of touchdowns and an interception, and a 10-point loss to the Sooners back in 2018. Is that correct, that year?
Yeah, 2018. He threw 110 passes in 2018. I can pull up the game logs, how many games he played, for 722 yards, 4 touchdowns on the year.
And this past season, it was 7 games for North Dakota State. Didn't end the season as their starting quarterback, like I mentioned. The report was kind of neck and neck with Trey Lance to get the starting quarterback job in a competition several years ago, where Lance obviously beat him out and then went on to be the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. So some talent there for sure. The production in college hasn't been overwhelmingly positive, and I think it reminded me, Patrick, of the conversation we were having this time last year, where I think we all thought that Ryan Helinski was going to be the starting quarterback for the Gamecocks, and then Colin Hill comes in from Colorado State with offensive coordinator Mike Bobo and ends up getting the job. And at that point, the shocking part to me was how Helinski basically never worked himself onto the field, Patrick. Like, it's one thing to get a starting quarterback job. It's another thing to get a stranglehold on that job and to be the only guy out there. Someone hit us up a little bit earlier on. This was Richard on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line, with an interesting perspective. I love it. These competitions are open for anyone to win under Beamer. Really evaluating talent and not caught up in the hype of what kids did in high school. Imagine if he had been here with Skarnecchia at quarterback in 2018. Definitely much better year for the Gamecocks, because he'd have been given a chance after that Missouri game. Certainly it was head-scratching that Michael Skarnecchia never got back on the field after playing pretty well against Missouri. And that was one of the real frustrations of the Jake Bentley / Will Muschamp kind of relationship and era. But then Will Muschamp didn't have the option to play Jake Bentley after he got hurt in that North Carolina season opener a couple of years ago, and Ryan Helinski was the best option. And the fact that he didn't parlay that into playing again the next year, and Colin Hill came in and beat him out, that was one of the most surprising parts of last year. And now Helinski, from a backup role over at a different school in Northwestern, where Hunter Johnson, the Clemson transfer, is going to get the start in game number 1. Crazy that this is where we're at right now. So, Patrick, if you had to put your money on it as we sit here today, first of all, do you think Shane Beamer will announce a starting quarterback at tomorrow's press conference? Let's go with that.
No, I don't. No, I think he'll announce it next Tuesday. Because
Okay.
I guess this would be, it's only been, it's his first practice. Zeb Nolan's first practice was Thursday, right? I thought, because we talked about it on Friday, or was it before that?
This was a week ago, you're saying, right? So not this past.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 10 days in, maybe something like that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right. About
So
10 days ago.
this would probably be still the big week for him. Maybe like I don't know, like he's so new to the being on the field that he's probably making large strides every day. And I would assume that the staff wants one more week to evaluate and see if he can make a big step and really seize the job. And then on Tuesday, you'll say it's our dress rehearsal week. Like, we've got our guy, and every practice is going to be devoted to making sure that Zeb is ready, or Jason Brown is ready, or Colton Gauthier is ready and has all the reps that he needs. And also it's another week to just monitor Luke Doty and say, okay, you can definitely, if you get to Tuesday and he still hasn't practiced, you can definitely rule Luke Doty out and say, we don't want to, he hasn't practiced in weeks. We don't want to give him 3 days of practice and then say, all right, you're the starting quarterback. We want to make sure he's fully healthy and ready. So I would expect next Tuesday.
I would be with you except for what we heard from Marcus Satterfield. When do you want to have a starting quarterback decision? ASAP, he said last week. And then not another scrimmage schedule, I don't think, this weekend. I think this was kind of how they delineate, the preseason portion of preseason practice where you're just focused on yourselves and you're not doing any kind of game prep. And now I believe it'll be moving forward, maybe a couple of more days with that mindset, but pretty much getting into a couple of extra days of game week number 1. Now, it won't just be for Eastern Illinois. We all know that. We'll hear that, yeah, you're preparing for only week number 1 in Eastern Illinois and doing what they do. But in reality, we know all teams game plan and put in certain things for games down the line. So that's the more interesting part to me, is because whoever plays the significant minutes in game number 1, I think, is the guy the Gamecock coaching staff is most confident in, will give them a chance to beat East Carolina on the road in week number 2 if they have to go there. It isn't necessarily going to be the guy that matches up the greatest against Eastern Illinois, if that makes sense, Patrick.
Yeah. Marshall asked, can Nolan run it all, or is he a pocket passer? In 2017, he had 67 dropbacks and 0 positive rushing plays. He has a career total of -5 rushing yards. His career long in 2018, he had a 28-yard run. But in 2017 and 2019, he had 0 positive rushing plays. So I think it's safe to say that he is a pocket passer. That's probably why Trey Lance beat him out. I don't know who played at North Dakota State last year, but yeah, we'll see if he's more agile than Colin Hill.
I think Jason Brown will be the starter, Richard says, but you'll see Nolan around the 3rd series or so against Eastern Illinois, and I think that would be one of the ideal scenarios. Gamecock Larry mentioned his depth chart for all 4 of the Gamecock quarterbacks at this point, adding Colton Gauthier, I think, in at number 3. I think he said Nolan, Jason Brown, Gauthier, and then Connor Jordan, the other walk-on at 4. If you saw all 4 of those guys in game number 1, ideal, best-case scenario for Gamecock football against a team that has only won 1 game each of the last couple of seasons on the FCS level. And I think that's what Gamecock fans might be hoping for. I don't know about expecting. That might be a little bit too much. 803-404-6100 is the number into the program. If you would like to call or text, love to hear your opinions about Gamecock football and football in general as college football kicks off this week officially, and then the Gamecocks are 12 days away. You're listening to the early game here on 107.5 The Game. Josh, if you're talking about Nolan, he wasn't even in the spring.
He was practicing sport in the spring.
He was playing for North Dakota State, man. I think he's a pretty similar option at this point. Patrick, what about you? I mean, Colin Hill had much better numbers from Colorado State.
He played a lot more, but when you're talking about 2 guys that, at least Colorado State was a FBS program, but 2 guys that didn't even win, that lost starting jobs at non-Power 5 schools coming in and starting for South Carolina in week 1, that would be pretty ridiculous if that happened 2 years in a row. Maybe a little bit less ridiculous this year when you talk about just on the surface, Colin Hill beating out the number one quarterback in the state of South Carolina, who was the most, like, at least discussed, if not heralded recruit South Carolina gotten in a long time, and came with a very high profile this year, I guess. Nobody really has that outside of Luke Doty, so it's just strange if you go back-to-back years with guys that got beaten out at mid-major / FCS schools.
I mean, but that's the thing, right? If you are a doom and gloom Gamecock fan, you can make the case no matter who gets named as a starting quarterback that it's going to be bad,
Wrong.
right? No matter who, you can make that case.
Yeah.
If it's Doty, then you're worried about health, and he was only 125 out of 130 from Pro Football Focus to begin with. Then that means you could take that as well. There's no backup quarterback. There's no depth.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can be optimistic about maybe how he'll do or his deservingness, but also think that this should never happen. This should never happen. You should be recruiting better and holding on to your guys so that this is not happening. You should never have a coach end up starting an SEC game if you're in a good situation. Especially when you were potentially going to have Ryan Helinski, Luke Doty, and Gunnar Stockton on the same team and have 3 Elite 11 quarterbacks in the same quarterback room, and now you're starting a coach.
And to carry on Joyner.
And carry on Joyner. And a Mr. Football.
Then you can, how you mix him into that narrative as well is really interesting, because you could say, hey, at least the coaches aren't moving that guy.
Yeah.
The wide receiver room can't afford to move maybe the best option at quarterback over because they have to have him at wide receiver right now.
Yeah, none of it's ideal.
You're saying that 125 out of 130? Yeah. I mean, they're basing it on his production. And it would be a little different if he lit things up in the spring game. But we didn't see that from Luke Doty. But, I mean, it means nothing. Don't get me wrong. We went through some of those rankings, and it was pretty crazy how they wildly fluctuated. I think Jamie Newman from Georgia was like number 3 going into last season or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think he was the highest rated SEC quarterback for preseason last year.
Not putting a ton of stock into it. It's just, we're just saying that you can make the case of doom and gloom almost always from the Gamecock perspective, but especially this year at quarterback.
And even when you compare it to, like, we don't have to compare it to Clemson because they just went from number 1 quarterback in the country to number 1 quarterback in the country. So obviously they're not going to be dealing with a situation like this. But I mean, Tennessee's terrible right now. They just had 1 million transfers, but they have a battle between 3 guys that have started games at big time programs. Like, it does seem like Joe Milton has started to take over the starting job. I think Joe Milton's going to end up being named the Tennessee starting quarterback. Potentially,
Yeah.
But I mean, between him and Hendon Hooker, who have started a ton of games, and Harrison Bailey, who has started for Tennessee, like, at least you
Virginia
have
Tech, Michigan, and Tennessee transfer quarterbacks, much different from North Dakota State / Iowa State, St. Francis, and then a high school quarterback last year.
And then Colorado State last year, yeah. And Kentucky, I mean, had a battle between a Penn State transfer and an Auburn transfer. So it's just a different world. I don't even know who Missouri's backup quarterback is. Is Sean Robinson still there?
Got me.
Who was the TCU?
Got about 20 seconds till we get back into the rejoins and stuff.
Thank you. But then, Chris, that's also part of the conundrum for the Gamecock coaching staff, right? if Doty's going to get out there and run around, he's not completely 100%, and he goes down against Eastern Illinois, and he's your best shot at winning right now, then you just awful job of coaching. And no quarterbacks are arrested in that Kentucky thing there. What?
Did you see the video of him eating the banana though?
No.
Oh, he posted TikTok. He eats the skin on the banana. He just eats the banana whole.
What are you doing, dude?
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter multiple times.
Yeah, they're up.
Love for you to tee it up with us this Friday, 10 a.m. Charwood Golf Club, 14th anniversary 1075 The Game Golf Tournament, presented by Integrated Media. We got Panera breakfast for you, Little Big's lunch. Going to raise some money for Camp Cole. Register now. Give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000. You can register as an individual or as a foursome. Captain's choice will be the format. A trip to Kiowa will be the winning team prize. Also going to raffle off a pair of tickets to the Gamecock football season opener against Eastern Illinois. Got a chance to win $10,000 with a hole-in-one on a par 3. That's presented or sponsored by Buford Lending, I should say. Trophies there, courtesy of the Trophy and Award Center, located over on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. This Friday, 10 a.m., Charwood Golf Club. Give them a call, 755-2000, if you would like to register for our 14th anniversary 1075 The Game Golf Tournament there. Talking a lot in the video live stream, sponsored by Buford Lending, by the way, at Facebook, YouTube Live, on Twitter as well, if you would like to join us there. Just about this quarterback situation as it continues to evolve, and it almost has us back to a similar conversation that we were having last year, Patrick, with not being able to watch practice, any kind of meaningful practice or scrimmage or the whole thing. And the Gamecocks just had one on Saturday, and no official word out about that, no stats, no nothing for us to go off of. So we're going off of what we're hearing and try to avoid rumors and speculation. But when we only have that to go on, when you have a trusted source of information like Wes Mitchell over at Gamecock Central reporting that Zeb Nolan is a legit contender right now with Jason Brown to be the starter if Luke Doty can't go in game number 1 because of the midfoot sprain against Eastern Illinois on September 4th. To me, this does remind me of just the feel of the conversation this time last year, Patrick, where it was like, all right, I guess Colin Hill, he knows Mike Bobo's offense. I guess the coaches know better. I mean, no one would know better than Mike Bobo himself about who he can trust the most to run the offense and the whole thing. But I think it was that there was such a high ceiling, we thought, for a guy coming out of the state of California and as highly recruited as Ryan Helinski was, and then seeing him absolutely light things up in his career opener against Charleston Southern, again, considering the competition, but then parlaying that the next week at Williams-Brice Stadium, where it was the second most pass attempts, I think, in Carolina history, that they just decided that they would put basically all of the game on a true freshman quarterback, and that's the best chance they had to beat Alabama, and he throws for 300-plus yards against Nick Saban and company. And then if you would have told me that that was going to be the highlight, that was going to be the peak, the pinnacle of Ryan Helinski's, certainly his South Carolina career. We don't know if it's going to be the highlight of his entire football career because he didn't earn the starting job at Northwestern for game number 1. It's kind of mind-boggling where things have gone here in the last couple of years if you look at it from just the Gamecock quarterback perspective as we sit here now.
Well, yeah, because the plan was, I don't remember what it was, but I remember we talked about it maybe 2 years ago. The best quarterback rooms or the best succession plans in college football in South Carolina was right up there near the top because they had Jake Bentley, and then we were going to redshirt Helinski, and then he was going to start for a couple of years and go to the NFL while Luke Doty redshirt, and then he was going to go to the NFL, and then while he was starting, and then Gunnar Stockton was going to be redshirting, and then he would take over, and then by that point we would be national championship contenders, and we'd have the best quarterbacks in the country. And fast forward, and we're potentially starting a coach after last year, starting a kid who was beaten out at mid-major Colorado State. And then we currently have a battle between 2 FCS quarterbacks, one of whom didn't even win the starting job last year. Like, it just, when you word it just flatly and state the facts at people's past, it's like, it sounds terrible and it should never happen at a program like South Carolina or anyone in the SEC.
Jim, I'm amazed by this one. Why can't we as a fan base, Jim says on the Facebook live stream, for once trust this coaching staff to actually choose the best quarterback option and not question it or assume anything's wrong? Oh,
well, we did that last year.
no, I don't think everybody did that. But, I mean, that is the clear advice that I will always give to anyone that's questioning a quarterback choice is that, I mean, you don't know about, about a hundredth probably of football knowledge that a South Carolina offensive coordinator knows. He's seen practice every single day. He sees the data attached to that. He's going to make the most informed decision. Someone earlier said as well, like, do you think that Colin Hill really won the job last year for Mike Bobo, or he just gave it to him because he kind of came in and was his old offensive coordinator? Yeah, I think that every coaching staff, Jim, does their best job to evaluate and choose the best quarterback option for them, just out of a sense of selfishness because you want to keep your job. You want to win games. I mean, this is not high school politics of who knows whose parent and blah, blah, blah. This is millions of dollars on the line for these guys in the profession. I just think out of self-preservation, these coaches choose the best option. And it's a brutal business, man. Brutal. And so I think whatever Mike Bobo was requiring about this point last year, that Colin Hill was giving it to him better than Ryan Helinski was. And it just wasn't good enough for South Carolina to be a good football team. I think that's why it's only natural. And then having seen Jake Bentley and the weird Michael Scarnecchia one game and his only opportunity play pretty well, good enough to get South Carolina a comeback win against an SEC opponent. Chris says Muschamp killed that for everyone. The ability for Gamecock fans, I think, to trust a coaching staff is what he's talking about. I agree with that in a lot of ways. 803-404-6100. Jay from the Interstate. This is another one that makes my head want to explode. Jay says, Carolina's biggest issue still seems to be the quarterback position. Not disagreeing with him on that at all. Shane Beamer will need to address that position if he wants to be successful. No doubt. But the way you address that is through recruiting, right? And what we saw from Will Muschamp was actually good on paper quarterback recruiting. Kerryon Joyner, Jake Bentley, Brandon McElwain, Ryan Helinski, all really good recruits on paper. Jay from the Interstate says all the 4-star recruits over the past 5 to 6 years have not worked out. Coaching or overrated, but sure. But Gunnar Stockton could have helped turn the program around. That last thing is the part that boggles my mind because it's always the next dude. It has always been the next dude. And even in that list of quarterbacks that I gave you, it was always the next guy is probably going to be the guy that turns it around.
Well, he was also a 5-star, top 2, depending on where you look, quarterback in the country. So I agree with that. But I also wouldn't say that all the four stars didn't work out. I mean, Jake Bentley led you an 8-game season and a big bowl win against Michigan. And every year he at least played well enough the season before to make you think maybe this is the year that he stops throwing interceptions at big moments and South Carolina wins these close games. That never really happened. And then Ryan Helinski never played bad, played really bad. There were some boneheaded decisions, like the Missouri game, where you're just like, all right, these are mistakes from a young kid. But every time he was on the field, he showed enough to make you think, yeah, we can win games with this kid going forward. So it wasn't like he was just a bust. I think that whole situation was mismanaged last year.
Not every time I saw him in his true freshman season, but again, that was with a grain of salt. The evaluation that we got to see because it was his true freshman season. He was thrust into that starting spot way ahead of schedule because of injury. And you give a guy a benefit of the doubt, especially when you see some promise, like what he did against Alabama. When you see leadership skills and you know the story, you hear the guy talk and the whole thing, but to not have seen him at all sophomore season, mind-boggling. Chris is on the same page there on the Facebook live stream. My thing is, why didn't we try our options? That was Muschamp's problem. That was one of the many things that sealed his downfall. Josh is saying that the sky is not falling. It'd be worse. Yeah, Muschamp. And Troy says no coach is going to start a QB that they don't think is the best option, even Muschamp. You just have to trust the coaches. But that's the thing. You got to trust coaches until they do things to break your trust. I was just talking to the 8-year-old about this the other day. Like, hey, man, I trusted you. And then you made that bonehead decision. I forget what it was. Like, I don't trust you anymore. Oh, yeah, it was about knowing your own body and being able to go to the bathroom when you got to go to the bathroom. Like, hey, man, I trust you. But no, I can't trust you anymore. Not anymore. And I think that is a pretty good analogy about what Gamecock quarterbacks have done the last few years.
But I also don't completely agree with Troy that every coach is always going to put in the QB they think is the best option. Like, I don't fully believe that Mike Bobo put Luke Doty in during the Missouri game because he necessarily thought that, or because Muschamp was the only reason that Colin Hill was still starting. Muschamp wanted to stand by him. Like, I think that's a coach saying, hey, I'm making a change right now because at least they're not going to put this on me the last 3 games. We'll attribute it to a freshman QB who's never really played. It's like in the NFL, like Jens Bears could be an example right now because they just drafted Justin Fields. They have a relatively lame duck front office and coaching staff. And a lot of the theories are, hey, they're going to start Andy Dalton for the first part of the season. Then they're going to put Justin Fields in. By the end of the year, he's going to flash a little bit, and they'll be able to use the excuse, hey, look what we just did with Justin Fields. We can't slow his progress right now. Keep us around for next year, and everything will change next year. Like, people use that as an excuse and build in excuses for themselves to keep themselves around. Like, Mike Bobo was auditioning for every team in the SEC to be their offensive coordinator or to potentially try and become a head coach again. So if he had made Luke Doty look really good for the last 3 games, people would have just said, oh, that Muschamp was the only reason. Muschamp holding back his offense again or holding back his quarterback again. Like, there are also, you use the word self-preservation, and that is a big part of it. So I don't fully believe all of this.
Jay says, not trying to make your head explode, just saying the quarterback position needs to be addressed. There's no doubt about it. And Jim saying his point is you don't let the last coaching staff mess it up for this coaching staff. They're not going to necessarily make the same mistakes. No doubt about it. I'm just saying that Gamecock fans, it's Groundhog Day in a lot of ways this year. And I don't know of any other SEC schools out there that have gone through this in this way for sure.
Well, we've never never even heard of this situation.
Right,
I'm still waiting for someone to give me an example of a guy that went from graduate assistant to starting quarterback week 1. I don't think it's happened. I tried to Google every combination of keywords, and all that ever pops up is South Carolina makes coach into player.
Well, just to be in the conversation, because that's where it is right now, right? This hasn't happened. It's nowhere near official, nothing like that. It's just that you're here from West Mitchell or there, Gamecock Central, that the competition pretty close. It could happen. I mean, you can go the other way too. Even if it doesn't happen in that way, and Jason Brown gets the start, when's the last time an FCS guy has transferred up and gotten start in game number 1 for an SEC program? And those are the 2 guys right now battling it out, just from where the recruiting has come from, what it was just a few years ago. But then again, that didn't work out either.
I really am trying to think of an example of an FCS guy transferring, like even a guy that lit it up in the FCS saying, all right, now I'm going to move on to
is that kid from Eastern Washington, right? That transferred to Oregon. I want to, right? Set all the records at Eastern Washington, transferred, I believe it was to Oregon for a year. I'll look it up. You look very confused, Patrick.
I don't remember this. I'll look.
Alan says, when was the last time Carolina had a drafted quarterback? Was it Anthony Wright? No, it wasn't Alan. It was Todd Ellis.
Oh, Vernon Adams.
In the 80s. So I had it right, Eastern Washington to Oregon.
You did, yeah. And he was not good for Oregon, really.
803-404-6100 if you would like to join. It is creeping towards late August in the season opener, and there are quarterbacks to talk about at South Carolina. Fun show. It's early game on 107.5 today. Boy, do we need professional help around my house now. Got the kids doing virtual school this week, so the house is going to be a wreck. We actually switched out the area rug last night at my house, maybe in an attempt to get more control over what's going on the flooring. it makes me appreciate my friends over at Zero Res that much more these days. Zero Res has come out to my house a couple of times and cleaned my carpets, cleaned that area rug, cleaned the tiles, both the kitchen and the bathroom, and man, it makes a massive difference. Just the feel, the fresh feel that Zero Res leaves around our house. They do a great job, have done a great job, and I think they'll do a great job for you, whether it's your home or your business. Let Zero Res get out there with their patented powered water system. No harsh chemicals involved. That's especially important at my house where I have an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and 16-month-old boy. You know what the 8 and 6-year-old did immediately after we put down that new area rug last night? They just rolled around on it. And like, yep, this is the only way we can test it. Roll around on it. Fortunately, Zero Res has kept our guys in good shape around our house. Let them improve your home or business right as well. No leftover soapy residue, by the way. That's why my carpets have stayed cleaner longer. Yours can as well. Zero Res. Great deal for you right now. 3 rooms of carpet cleaned, only $119 plus a free hallway when you mention me, Tim Hill. 803-262-4020. Give them a call, or you can book online right now at ZeroResColumbia.com. That's Zero Res. Spell it backwards or forwards. It's the right way to clean.
Yeah, Waddy, it was, I guess, a strain because we kind of just built up to her running and jumping around again. She put a little bit weight on it later in the day, then started walking on it, and then by the next day she was comfortable running and jumping again. So we're pretty sure she jumped off her roommate's bed, which is really high, like probably 4 feet off the ground or something like that. And I think she just jumped wrong, and she always does that too. She jumps on the roommate's bed to look out the front window, and then if she sees a car drive by, she jumps down and runs to the other room to look at the car driving by. So that's my theory. I have pulled up the quarterback rankings from Zeb Nolan's year.
He was a 3-star guy, I believe. That sound right to you?
Yes, the 60th ranked quarterback in the country. It's always very interesting going through the lists of these quarterback rankings. Do you know who was number 1 that year?
Number 1, Zeb Nolan's year. This is like 2017 when he came out?
2016.
Of course.
He was in the same class as Jake Bentley.
Wow. And that was the updated class or the fast-forwarded class of Bentley. So that I'm guessing the guy's in the NFL now?
No. Actually,
it was the same class that Jake Bentley was rated, I think, 1 behind or 1 ahead of Lamar Jackson, right?
No, I don't see Lamar Jackson on this list.
I think he should be.
Colin Hill is number 36 in this class.
Wow. So he's 24 spots above Zeb Nolan?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So did you say the guy's in the NFL or not?
I don't think so.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
the number 2 guy who was actually number 1 in some ratings.
Is that Jacob Eason?
Yes. It's actually Justin Herbert was 26. He was a 3-star. That worked out. Ian Book also a 3-star, number 20. Winning
give us some hints. Give us a hint, and not a giveaway hint on number 1. Let's play along.
Transferred from the SEC to the Big Ten.
That's not Justin Fields, is it? He's not that old. Who else transferred from the SEC to the Big Ten? It's not Tagovailoa's brother, is it?
No, he's still in Maryland.
What I mean, but you're saying he transferred from the SEC to the Big Ten, right?
He transferred from Ole Miss.
from Ole Miss to the Big Ten.
Yep.
He transferred to the Big Ten from Ole Miss. Plumlee's still there.
To Michigan.
Oh, wow. That dude's name is – holy crap. Yeah, we talked about him a bunch, too.
Yeah.
He tried to make it in the NFL. Is that what it was?
I mean, I think I don't even know if he got drafted. Shea Patterson.
Justin's got it. Shea Patterson. I couldn't even think of the
Was he
name.
drafted? I don't
think he got drafted.
Patterson was drafted in the 39th round of the MLB draft, though. No, he is actually playing for the BC Lions right now, it turns out.
Old Shea Patterson. Well done, Justin.
Yeah, look at this top 10 ranking. Shea Patterson, Jacob Eason, KJ Costello, all of the top 5 quarterbacks transferred. Jacob Eason transferred from Georgia to Washington. KJ Costello transferred from Stanford to Mississippi State. Malik Henry went to Florida State, then went to Last Chance U, and then went to
Is it
I don't
Liberty?
remember. It might have been Liberty, yeah. And then
Or
Felipe
Liberty, yeah.
Franks went from Florida to Arkansas.
Wow.
Number 7 was Dwayne Haskins in that class.
Whoa.
Just a wild class. And that's just the pro styles. Let's check out the dual threats.
About 30 seconds.
Isn't Lamar – I think Lamar Jackson is in that class.
That's probably what it was, yeah. Wow, this is equally interesting. Number 1, dual threat quarterback in the country, Jarrett Garantano. And the number 2 is Brandon McElwain.
Oh, my God.
Jalen Hurts there at number 4.
Whoa.
Touchdown Terry, number 8. Chaz Surratt, who ended up just getting drafted as a linebacker for North Carolina last year.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah, let's try to recap this here in the last couple of minutes.
Kids are up.
Wild, absolutely wild is what I would consider the recap that Patrick's been going through on the live video stream of the 2016 quarterback rankings, recruiting rankings of guys coming out in the class of 2016 that included Jake Bentley and Brandon McElwain from the Gamecock standpoint. And Patrick, remember the narrative at this point, man, Gamecock football recruiting at quarterback has really turned the corner and really elevated. And on paper, that is by letter of the law, absolutely correct, especially according to these recruiting rankings. Which service you going by back in the day here in 2016?
Yeah, I'm on 24/7, and South Carolina that year had the number 12 pro-style quarterback in the country, Jake Bentley, and the number 2 dual-threat quarterback in the country, and Brandon McElwain in the same recruiting class.
Wait a second. You're short-selling it because they also ended up with Colin Hill, who was in this recruiting class.
Number 26 pro-style.
Number 26, okay. And now they got another guy from the class of 2016 that reportedly is in the mix to start the season opener in Zeb Nolan.
Number 60. Yep.
Number 60. And was it considered a 3-star guy? So this all spawned off of one of you guys asking us where was Zeb Nolan ranked from a recruiting standpoint, or the overrated recruiting rankings, I think is how you guys put it, coming out of high school. That was from Chris. And just to go back and look at these, Shea Patterson, it took me forever. I didn't even figure this out. That was Justin on the live video chat who got the context clues that Patrick was giving to name the number 1 quarterback recruit of 2016. And then where were some of these other guys?
Well, everybody transferred. Shea Patterson committed to Ole Miss, ended at Michigan. Jacob Eason committed to Georgia, ended at Washington. KJ Costello, Stanford, ended at Mississippi State. Felipe Franks, Florida, ended up at Arkansas. Dwayne Haskins is in this class. Shane Buechele, Texas, ended up at SMU. And Jalen Hurts, Alabama, ended up at Oklahoma. Like, all of these kids started. Touchdown Terry committed to Oregon and ended up being maybe the winningest quarterback in Kentucky history. I don't even know.
Oh, man, talking football is really fun this time of year. This is all coming out of the report of Jason Brown, Zeb Nolan, likely start game number 1 if Luke Doty's not healthy. We'll continue that conversation. Hour 3 coming up early.
So are they rotating school for the kids?
Right? Crazy, huh? Oh, for me? What do you mean rotating school?
Yeah, well, you said they're virtual this week. Is that something new or was that planned?
Oh, no, it's only because a kid in their class had COVID, so they're considered close contacts and have to be
Oh,
quarantined.
I gotcha. Okay.
At first, it was just going to be the 8-year-old. They didn't send the 6-year-old home with them on Friday, and then we just got a random yesterday or Saturday that someone in his class as well. Yeah. And speaking of that, I think we have to go pick up a computer now so we can have them both on computers at the same time. I need to pull my car out of my garage here, and you guys don't need to hear all that. So I'm going to hop out for a couple minutes, be right back.
All right, so Troy, yes, Lamar was 29th in the 15 class. And I remember Tim said Lamar because there was like something notable about people being ranked ahead of Lamar Jackson. I think the answer, I know I'm looking at the list, was the 13th rated quarterback in the country was dual threat Jawan Jennings, who ended up playing wide receiver for Tennessee and getting drafted to the Buccaneers. Joe Burrow was 19th in this class, which is just so far down there, but he was still a 4-star recruit. And then South Carolina lands Lorenzo Nunez, number 31 ranked quarterback in the country, just 3 spots behind Lamar Jackson. Directly behind Lamar Jackson is Kelly Bryant. Right below Lorenzo Nunez is David Sills, who ended up playing wide receiver for West Virginia. I think he left the program after not being able to play quarterback. I need to look at this real quick. I think he played quarterback for West Virginia, left the team when he didn't win the job, and then came back as a wide receiver. Did he play basketball? College career? El Camino College, yeah. Yes, he left. I assume California is what it sounds like.
Oh.
Alondra Park, California. It's a community
Picturing
college.
the car.
Los Angeles County.
Oh.
David Sills is from he's from Elkton, Maryland. Jeez. Yeah, going through these quarterback rankings is insane. Every year. Basically, it seems like South Carolina's got the oldest quarterbacks in the country have got to be Jake Bentley and I guess Zeb Nolan at this point. I can't see anybody from this list. Find one person that's still in college. Actually, I'll go to Lamar's class and find one person still in college. I don't think it's possible. How old is Jake Bentley? 23? 23. Almost 24.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it'll be
surprising.
24 in November. Zeb Nolan. Age. Jake Bentley should be a year younger than Zeb Nolan because he left a year early, but I guess they don't put this guy's birthday on. I guess programs don't put birthdays on the rosters.
All right, Jake is November 23rd, 1997.
Yeah, and he left. He was in the same recruiting class as that, but Jake Bentley also was a year younger where he came from. First, I think Jake is this quarterback at Southern Alabama. If he's not, that's not a great look. They've actually announced it. Updating 7 South Alabama position battles after the second scrimmage from AL.com. Yes. Desmond Trotter, the starting quarterback in 2020, took all the second-team reps in Saturday's scrimmage during the last several practices. Tanner McGee had been battling Trotter for the right to be Jake Bentley's backup. So I think Jake Bentley transferred and was immediately the starting quarterback. That would be pretty bad if he was not. Nolan's birthday, nowhere to be found.
Nolan, I think he was.
So there
looks
probably
like
is
he was 20 in
a,
2017.
20 in 2017. So yeah, he's probably 24. Maybe we'll turn 25 during the season.
Looks like maybe he just turned 24. There's one old Twitter thing.
There's the only people that would be older is either one of the Mormon mission quarterbacks that we always see, like Brandon Whedon and guys like that, or someone that tried to play baseball and then came back to play football. It's like the only times we ever see that, I feel like. Oldest QB. Chris Winkie was 25. I know Brandon Whedon was drafted at 28. Arizona had a 26-year-old freshman quarterback a couple years ago. South Carolina State had the oldest player in Division I history.
Dang.
Let's see, what year was this? They had a 55-year-old running back.
How does that even
Joe
work?
Thomas. This was 2016.
Oh yeah, SC State for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, his kid plays in the NFL, right?
Yeah, linebacker apparently for the Packers in 2016 he was.
Yeah.
Let's see if he's still in the league. Houston Texans.
Morning, Whit.
Now we're about to head back in.
Yeah, that's a good question. Did you check on that for Chris?
Yeah.
He is the starting quarterback at South Alabama.
Took the job from a kid who started last year.
I wonder how many guys have been starting quarterbacks at 3 college football programs. Can't be that many.
Not counting graduate school or community college.
Right. I mean, legit college football program.
I would really like to be able to come up with one. I mean, Tate Martell doesn't count.
Right. Tried and failed. Anonymous Raj starting us off in hour number 3 on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. Are we all stuck in college football purgatory and just don't know it? It's a great question. Might be a little bit too doom and gloom for a lot of Gamecock fans this morning. I get that, but this is all coming out of the discussion about where Gamecock football is, especially as it pertains to starting quarterback for game number 1. Scrimmage over the weekend, nothing public coming out from a way of comments after that thing. No stats or numbers or anything like that. So not much details for us to go on. So we're going off of a trusted source of information from Gamecock football and Gamecock Central's Wes Mitchell, who says he's hearing that Zeb Nolan is a legit contender to start week number 1, along with the St. Francis transfer and Jason Brown. And it's basically between those two guys. If Luke Doty is not healthy enough to go with the midfoot sprain that has him questionable at this point, and last week that we heard from offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield, they're not going to put him out there unless he's 100%. Not going to risk injury, and especially with a guy who is mobile and his legs will be a big part of the game plan or part of who he is as a player. I get that for sure. Now, from the non-doom and gloom standpoint, let's start with that here in hour number 3, Patrick, if that's okay with you. You signing off on that?
I'll agree. I'll allow it.
I appreciate it. From the non-doom and gloom standpoint, no one is saying that game number 1's outcome is in jeopardy right now for the University of South Carolina against an Eastern Illinois team that won 1 game last spring in an FCS schedule and then won 1 game, I believe it was, in the season before that. No one is saying that because we all understand just from a physicality standpoint, a run game standpoint, you should be able to handle Eastern Illinois very comfortably no matter who's your quarterback. The question becomes, who's your number 2 quarterback for the season behind a number 1 guy in Luke Doty, who is certainly not getting a bunch of national hype as being a guy who can win you a bunch of games in the SEC. So where is your quarterback depth? We all understand what's happened the last several years. There have been quarterback struggles in multiple ways, including Jake Bentley and being inconsistent in his career. He was the face of the program and a starter for basically 3 seasons, with that 3rd one cut short, injured in 2019 season opener. Then you had the true freshman Ryan Helinski come in, highly recruited out of the state of California, looked very promising first couple of games, and plateaued, I think would be putting it nicely. Since has transferred out after last year, about this time last year, Patrick. This is where I started this morning's show, coming in and feeling a little bit like Groundhog Day. Get your booties on outside, everybody. I got you, babe. Because this time last year, the whole off season, Gamecock fans logically thought that Ryan Helinski was going to be the starting quarterback as a sophomore, having played in 11 out of the 12 games, plenty of experience, shown flashes and potential, been a highly recruited guy, and now going to take the next step because basically no one was in front of him on the depth chart. He was the guy. He earned it. He beat out Dakereon Joyner this time last year. Year before last? Year before last. This time the year before last as the backup quarterback. And he was going to be the guy. So, right, that's the case. And then Colin Hill comes in with Mike Bobo from Colorado State. Even though he's got 3 ACL injuries, beats out Helinski last year. Helinski never even gets much of a shot. We got on the field at the end of the LSU game in that debacle. But besides that, no real meaningful playing time. Colin Hill was the guy until 2.5 games left in the season. Mike Bobo's the interim coach. Offensive line can't pass block anyway. Get Doty out there, the freshman, see what he can do. Luke Doty's obviously the guy going into this season. No one else is in front of him on the depth chart. Helinski transfers to Northwestern, where he's already been beaten out by Hunter Johnson for game number 1 as the starting quarterback. And then Doty goes down with the midfoot sprain, which originally was thought to be much more serious, officially questionable at this point. Did not participate in the Saturday night spring scrimmage as far as anyone knows. And while this happened, when this happened, a graduate assistant who was on the staff, the coaching staff, still had a year of eligibility. Zeb Nolan, get on in there. Patrick, you and I, we have the discussion with Bill, or even without Bill. To me, this is a depth thing, nothing to overreact to. You got to have guys on practice field. You're trying to go 4 units at a time. You need 4 quarterbacks. So instead of just having a graduate assistant be one of the quarterbacks, if he's got some eligibility, why not call him a player, right? But no way he's going to really see the field. And now we're seeing that, no, he's very much a contender. Well, that's the word from Wes Mitchell. It's very much a contender to get on the field, even though he just lost the North Dakota State starting quarterback job last spring and thought coaching was going to be the way to go for going the last year of eligibility. Started his career at Iowa State. We went back at the 2016 quarterback rankings from 24/7 Sports, 60th in the country is where Zeb Nolan was, a 3-star guy.
60th pro style.
My fault, 60th pro style.
So probably more like 100th overall.
But that's 24 spots behind where Colin Hill was at the time, right?
Yep.
And they were how many spots behind Jake Bentley and Brandon McElwain?
Jake Bentley was number 12 pro style, so he was 14 spots above Colin Hill.
Uh-huh.
And Brandon McElwain was the number 2 dual threat quarterback in the country.
In the country at that point. And so now Gamecock football has had 4 guys from one class play quarterback or certainly be in the mix to play quarterback right now. It's just kind of mind-boggling. And this is not a doom and gloom kind of thing. I know a bunch of you have been weighing in on this. McCool Care Heating Air text line, Keith in Camden, maybe the strongest. This speaks of a lack of quarterback Division I talent. Pitiful. But that's the thing. You just heard those rankings, right? Number 2 overall dual threat quarterback in the country. Number 12 pro-style quarterback. That's pretty good. That was in the same class. Those 2 guys came in the same class for South Carolina. And then we've seen where it's going. Ryan Holinsky was way up there. I forget what he was, pro-style quarterback in the country. Patrick, feel free to go look that up.
I think it was number 1 in California, right?
It was really good, whatever it was. Yeah, I think you're right. At the time, I remember seeing his team's high school record. I think they were like 4-6 or something. I was like, amongst all the hype, I was kind of whispering to myself and remembering, like, this guy's high school team only won 4 games? And he's rated that high? It was an eyebrow raise for me at the time. But I know the division he played in was really, really good and the whole thing. So you can overlook those things. It was kind of like the Lorenzo Nunez high school numbers. Remember that? I mean, he barely threw the ball in high school, but the word was that South Carolina had evaluated him so highly because of 7-on-7, and a lot of high school offenses just don't offer their quarterbacks the system to thrive in. He was another guy, pretty highly thought of on the recruiting trail. Didn't pan out. So, man, it has been a journey for South Carolina fans recently, just from the quarterback perspective. And Patrick, we were also asking the question. We never heard this story of a graduate assistant taking off the coach's hat and whistle and putting on the pads and becoming a player and getting on the field, especially from a DC standpoint. Never heard that story. You mentioned, what about just what I threw out there? Remember, he's competing with another FCS transfer from St. Francis. And a guy a program that has not been heard of in college football circles. Certainly I never heard of before Jason Brown, and EJ Jenkins transferred in this year. And he's the other guy who might get the start. And so he threw out there, it's tough to remember a guy transferring up for FCS. I remember Vernon Adams from Eastern Washington ended up playing at Oregon. And then a lot of Gamecock fans, well-versed Gamecock fans, mentioned Bobby Fuller back in the day with Sparky Woods, coming from Appalachian State, which was FCS at the time, to South Carolina, and being a pretty solid quarterback. But, man, it is something else to follow South Carolina quarterbacks just here recently. And then the question came up, who's the last one that got drafted? And that's Todd Ellis back in the 80s. And then in the 9th round, I think, at that point, which doesn't even exist anymore. So not to be doom and gloom for you this morning, just trying to talk about it from a realistic standpoint. Patrick, I tried to ask you who you think will start for Gamecock football in game number 1 at quarterback. Did you ever give me a name?
Jason Brown is my answer.
You went Jason Brown.
That's my guess.
Okay. I don't know what to tell you this morning. What would be my guess? I don't even know where to go. Most of me wants to go with Jody right now, that he'll be able to bounce back from injury and that they want to go with him. But again, you still need to develop a backup quarterback and get him some meaningful snaps and have somebody ready to go. Crazy.
Did Jake Bentley go a full season without missing a game due to injury?
Yeah, I believe the 2nd season, right, where the Gamecocks go to the Outback Bowl and win
so
it.
He played every game that year, and the next year was the Skarnecchia rain game.
Yeah, I think
right?
that's
okay.
Okay. Go back and check it. But
Besides that, when is the last time the backup quarterback has not played for South Carolina? I mean, especially with a dual threat quarterback, you got to think that the backup needs to be ready every week if Luke Doty's going to be carrying the ball a lot.
But this is the thing from the Gamecock football fan standpoint, is that Will Muschamp was so polar opposite of Steve Spurrier from the quarterback standpoint, where Spurrier was ready. I mean, he rotated guys in. He went one play in, one play out for a while there with Chris Smelly and Steven Garcia. That was his plan. And Spurrier had the quickest hook in the history of college football when it came to quarterbacks. Will Muschamp was the opposite, especially with Jake Bentley in that weird Michael Scarnecchia situation where Scarnecchia comes in, plays for Bentley against Missouri, leads his team to a comeback SEC win, and never sees the field again. And so I think and then last year, what we saw happen with the Ryan Helinski situation, never really seeing Ryan Helinski, which Steve Spurrier, you had to have thought would have done at some point, saying, yeah, Colin's not getting it done. We're going to give Ryan a chance this week. It never happened with Mike Bobo and Will Muschamp. And then when Will Muschamp's out and Mike Bobo takes over, he takes his own guy out in Colin Hill and puts Luke W in at the end of the season to mediocre results that I think you could have only expected at that point with where the offensive line was pass blocking, the team's morale was with opt-outs and the whole thing. Chad, is Carolina the Cleveland Browns of college football with quarterbacks? How many starters have we had through the last 10 years? We'll go through that. It's got to be a bunch. I think you can go maybe the last 15 years and it gets even more. We had Chris Smelly. Then that bled into the Steven Garcia timeline. And then you had a few before then. It seemed like Steve Spurrier could never really get his guy until it led to Connor Shaw. Now that he's the exception of all this, right? And it's kind of ironic too that he ended up going to the Cleveland Browns and was one of those starting quarterbacks on that long, long list that the Browns had pre-Baker Mayfield, where it seems to be stable now. But at least you had the Connor Shaw era here in the last 10 years, the winningest quarterback in Carolina history, who, by the way, is one of 10 new U.S. Hall of Fame inductees, along with John Abraham from a football standpoint, Mike Roth headlining the new class of Hall of Famers announced on Friday.
I'm trying to go through the list just since my first year at Carolina, Spurrier's final year when Connor Mitch started the first game.
Okay.
How many played that year? Him, Orth, Nunez, and then
because that was the year that I would go back to, right? Because Shaw more than stabilized the Gamecock quarterback situation. Yes. Excellent. And then the next year, his backup, who had been excellent in backup duty, takes over as a starting quarterback in Dylan Thompson and only sets the record for single season passing yardage, I believe. And year to hear Gamecock fans complain about Dylan Thompson just boggled my mind when the defense continued to give up fourth quarter lead after fourth quarter lead, and it was clearly not a quarterback that Carolina wasn't winning games. But then after that, the natural succession was that Connor Mitch got to be in the program for a couple of years. This is a guy who had the second most career high school passing yards in the state of North Carolina behind Chris Lee. And then he struggles in game number one mightily against North Carolina, and that's the game where Steve Spurrier comes in the post-game press conference like, yep, going to talk about a punter. You're their best player today. And South Carolina barely eked out that game, and that was the weird season that North Carolina goes on to not lose again until the ACC championship game, I think it was. And South Carolina has to end up putting in Perry Orth for an injured Connor Mitch in that Kentucky game. Orth with, I'd say, mixed results, where it leads Steve Spurrier to say, you know what, let's throw this Lorenzo Nunez kid out the Central Florida game. What you got there, 3?
3, yep. So that's 3 that season.
That year. And then Spurrier says he went and looked himself in the mirror at halftime of that first game that Nunez started against a winless Central Florida team that year. You got to find something else. We're done. Done here. And then they end up going back to Orth, I think.
Yep.
And Sean Elliott takes over, and somehow he ends up slinging it out with Deshaun Watson at the end of the season at Williams-Brice Stadium that year and making it a competitive game. But then, okay, after that season, what do we got? Is that the
Orth started, then Jake? Yeah.
No. That was
Orth. That was the next season, yes.
Orth starts, but Brandon McElwain takes over, and then Jake Bentley takes over in game number 6. Right. So 3 more, right? Three more starting quarterbacks, but 5 total because
5
Orth.
Total, yeah. Right? Yeah. And then Scarnecchia filled in for Bentley, and then we moved into Helinski, and then Colin Hill. and then Luke Doty.
And
miss
now,
any? Aaron
possibly-
Joyner never started a game.
I think that is correct. You're
So
right.
9.
But is credited with being on the field in the most meaningful of wins in the last however many years of that Georgia game in Athens. Just a crazy journey it's been for Gamecock fans watching all this from the outside looking in. And Jim hit us up earlier and says that what the previous coaching staff did shouldn't saddle Gamecock fans on the current staff and let them make the right decision and the whole thing and have confidence in them and the whole thing. And then you had, I think it was Anthony that said, no, Will Muschamp broke us for that. It's just where the situation is, including the Colin Hill transferring in out of state. And it was about this time last year that he ends up winning the job to be the starting quarterback for Carolina. And the offense just never got going. They were able to run the football pretty effectively, but was not an effective offense. And that's why one of the reasons why Mike Bobo moved on to Auburn in that weird situation where he was Shane Beamer's offensive coordinator for a couple of days. And here we are with Marcus Satterfield and company looking for a starting quarterback still for game number 1 with Luke Doty officially questionable with the mid-foot sprain and a couple of FCS guys most recently, Zeb Nolan and Jason Brown battling it out to get some playing time. Incredible. So many ways. 803-404-6100, the number in the program. Love to hear your thoughts. And Chad says, so yes, the Cleveland Browns of college football, LOL. Just crazy with all of these top quarterback prospects that none have produced at a consistent level. Again, though, Patrick, not necessarily unique to South Carolina. I think the unique part is just the frequency of guys coming through the program and doing it in different ways. And again, having the same result. Basically the same result, I would say. And then you still got Jake Bentley. The class is 2016. Going to start for South Alabama this year. While you got other guys in the class of 2016, this is Jalen Hurts going into year number 2 with the Eagles, right?
Yep.
And
Wow.
he already had won a couple of national championship and battled for the trophy and the whole thing. Crazy. Monday, college football is here this weekend. College football will be here for Gamecock and Clemson fans a week from Saturday. It's the early game here on 107.5 The Game.
Tim, have you seen the Malice at the Palace documentary on Netflix?
I've seen it talked about, but I haven't seen it yet. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched it last night.
How was it?
Pretty good. It was pretty good. Just does a little background on a background story on Ron Artest, Jermaine O'Neal, and Steven Jackson, and then gets into what happened that night and all of the going through the footage to find all the guys and the thousands of hours of tape they had to watch to find the guy that threw the first soda, to
Right.
find the guy that threw the chair. One of the guys that was interviewed for it was the guy that walked down on the court and squared up Ron Artest. It was pretty interesting.
Jordan Montgomery. Yep. Going with the Yankees tonight for the Yankees. Grayson Griner played in that game for the Tigers last night. Took a picture afterward with Miguel Cabrera. Home run number 500. Pretty cool. Yeah, Alan. No doubt, man. Here to talk it out. Here to talk it out. As my 1-year-old is crying right upstairs. Don't know if you can hear that one on the live.
Mm-mm.
Good.
Yeah, the kind of ending summary of that was that basically Jermaine O'Neal suffered from that more than anyone, even though he wasn't the most culpable, I guess.
But wasn't he like the executive producer of it?
I don't know, was he?
I think so. I think
Well, it
that's
was
last dance
like
thing.
he and Ron Artest, he hates Ron Artest basically
Really?
because yeah, I mean he was they almost fought or they tried to fight in the locker room after that game because Jermaine felt like Ron Artest started that entire thing and then got basically Jermaine drawn into it, and then the next year Ron Artest requested a trade to leave the Pacers, and Steven Jackson and Jermaine O'Neal felt like that was cowardly. Instead of talking about it and pushing through it, he just said, "Get me out of here."
Wow. Yeah, we'll never forget. I was sleeping on the floor of forget what kind of hotel it was in Anderson that night ahead of the Carolina Clemson game that ended up in the fight.
That was
So I think I got there at like 2:00 in the morning. It was on Sports Center because we had to do high school football the night before. Like, oh, what a mess. And then, wow.
it was a Friday night game, right?
And then, yeah.
Yeah, Ron Artest is a wild dude. There was a lot just about him. I didn't know that he just asked the Pacers if he could not be with the team to start the season so he could finish his album when he was like in his prime. Just making an album in the middle of the season. And he was just like, yeah, I mean, I had depression and anxiety, and I just, instead of confronting my problems, I just always went for the easiest route and left. So that's why I left the Pacers instead of talking to Jermaine O'Neal like a man. He's like very upfront about like, yeah, I didn't want to deal with any of that. I was just.
There's Waddy. There's Waddy. Can't make that stuff up.
I was 9.
Wow.
But I do remember that whole day on Saturday because I would just rewatch Sports Center every hour.
Yeah.
And I do remember that being every 5 minutes being played on Sports Center.
Oh, man, my 1-year-old is going nuts right now. Just what my wife needs on day one of virtual school.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about maybe we should can we do a 6-hour show this morning?
Coward.
Waddy, that was not 20-some years ago, sir. That was 2004.
Yeah.
But 17. I'll give you 20 if we're going to round up. Oh, yeah. I remember that, watching it as a pretty young dude, too. Like, this is crazy. Remember state troopers. So Louisiana Tech came to Williams-Brice back in the day and tried to interfere or to inject themselves a little bit into 2001.
Oh.
And it didn't work out. It wasn't taken too kindly. I'll just never forget like the state troopers on the field trying to break it up. That was the craziest part to me.
About to head back in.
Remember that too.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask, like, do you think if the Malice to Palace didn't happen, South Carolina and Clemson would have brawled the next day?
Who knows? Nobody knows.
Sports butterfly
But
effect.
I mean, I get mentioning in it, but I thought it was pretty weak.
Well, instead of taking responsibility.
Right, instead of calling his players out, on both teams out.
All right, you guys are up.
Love to have you out at Charwood, 14th anniversary, 107.5 The Game golf tournament celebration this Friday, 10 a.m. You can sign up as an individual or as a Captain's Choice foursome. Gonna have Panera breakfast and Little Pig's lunch for you. Give away a trip to Kiowa for the winning team. Raffle off a pair of tickets for the Gamecock season opener, and a possibility to win $10,000 on a hole-in-one contest sponsored by Buford Lending. That's our 14th anniversary golf tournament sponsored by Media. Just give Charwood a call to register right now at 755-2000. Again, you can register as an individual or as a four-person team. We're talking about the Gamecock football team and where they are right now. And Patrick, you mentioned that you don't think Shane Beamer's going to name a starting quarterback on Tuesday. Here's the way, or tomorrow. First time he's going to be speaking in a while. Didn't speak after the scrimmage Saturday night. Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central saying that he's hearing that Zeb Nolan is absolutely a legit candidate to start the season opener with Jason Brown, assuming Luke Doty is not healthy enough to go. And after hearing Marcus Satterfield, the Gamecocks offensive coordinator, last week talk about how very adamant he was that they won't put Doty out there unless he's 100%. I think questionable is officially 50-50 whether or not you'll play or not. I would put it right now at probably like 40-60, the chances that Luke Doty will be healthy enough to play in that game. That sound about right to you, Patrick?
Yeah, I would definitely lean towards Jason Brown or Zeb Noland or Gauthier. I just think they want to be careful.
Well, the word from Wes Mitchell there in Gamecock Central that Gauthier is more of a distant third in this quarterback competition to start that game. The experience certainly on the other guy's side, although most recently it was FCS experience for Zeb Noland this spring with North Dakota State, where he started, I think, the first 7 games and then got beat out and didn't start the end of the season, and that's why he thought his football career was over, was moving on to coaching. Then you had the opposite end of the recency spectrum, I guess, from Jason Brown, whose St. Francis season got canceled completely in 2020. And then transferred to South Carolina, did get spring practice in here, along with his teammate E.J. Jenkins. So he's been around the offense and Marcus Satterfield since he's come in, basically. I guess he transferred in a little bit later and wasn't here, wasn't on campus with the introduction of the new coaching staff. But I think for everything that was put in, maybe missed a couple of days max. And then you got Colton Gauthier, the true freshman, coming in as a 3-star recruit from the state of Georgia, who did come in January, but it seems to be lacking in the experience and transition. Still, the transition from high school to college seems to be a pretty big jump right now from him. So everything that we've heard about, somebody brought up Tommy Beecher, I think, in a comment on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line there. It's another guy to throw in that mix that Gamecock football has seen play quarterback recently. Yeah, Chris Smelly and the whole thing back in the day. It has been a journey. Anonymous texter, will someone please tell me what's wrong with Jason Brown as a starter, period? Certainly he should be the backup without any hesitancy. What's all the noise as to who should start? I'm a little confused here with the question. Patrick, do you understand it?
Because he looked really good on that touchdown throw in the spring game.
On one throw?
Yeah, that's why he should be the backup, if not the starter.
And again, the Zeb Nolan story is unprecedented as far as we know. Being a graduate assistant one day and then being a player the next day at an SEC program especially. But it's not like Jason Brown's story is normal or usual. Transferring up in football, especially at the quarterback position, just doesn't happen very often. I mean, it is 1% of 1% maybe of the quarterback transfers. Typically it's down or at best lateral. You could argue Jake Bentley has done lateral and now down, right? From South Carolina to Utah, from Utah to South Alabama. Ryan Halinsky, lateral, maybe you could say up a little bit. Northwestern's had more success on the football field recently than South Carolina, but he hasn't earned the starting job there. Trying to think of other quarterbacks recently transferring from South Carolina. Throw in Brandon McElwain transferring from South Carolina to Cal and ended up playing some at Cal at quarterback, then ended up trying to place a wide receiver there, and now is a minor league baseball player. Lorenzo Nunez transferring down from South Carolina. It's been a journey for a lot of these quarterbacks, and it's not just at South Carolina. It's just that the Gamecocks haven't found that next guy like they found in Connor Shaw not too long ago. But like they found, we thought with Jake Bentley until the injury, and then the injury led to Ryan Holinsky, and then the transfer out of the program for Bentley.
Of course, 5 game. What's your name?
It's pretty nuts right now where the South Carolina quarterback position is. And I think where the fan mindset is in not having a track record for Marcus Satterfield as an offensive coordinator, that was the thing to go off of. Right? Mike Bobo played quarterback at Georgia and did it well. Was a long-time offensive coordinator at Georgia in the SEC. Put up good offensive numbers over at Colorado State, even though didn't succeed as a head coach there. And then you come over from Colorado State to run Will Muschamp's offense, and you can say, hey, man, this guy knows a lot about offensive football. There's a reason that he has this guy. Others of you out there say, hey, that was a loyalty play only. Ryan Holinsky didn't get a fair shake. And some of you even saying, oh, I bet Holinsky's going to have a tremendous career at Northwestern and the whole thing.
And with Bobo, he was at least someone who had a track record that you could watch. And what people were saying about him was that basically he's super conservative and is a run-first guy. All of his run schemes are super advanced. So even if Holinsky was in there, he's not out there to sling it. Colin Hill is just going to be the guy that makes the right decision, makes the easy throws, and lets the run game do all the work. With Marcus Satterfield, we don't think that's necessarily the case. We assume that they want to air it out a little bit because it's a modern offense. Shane Beamer's coming from Oklahoma where their pass concepts they put up 600 yards a game through the air. So this year it just seems a little different. That was our rationalization for Colin Hill. Just you're not going to throw the ball more than 20 times a game anyway, so just make the right decision and let Bobo do the work.
A couple other names that have popped up in the Gamecock quarterback time machine this morning. Sadler T on the Cool Care Heating and Air text line. Who remembers Antonio Hefner?
Not me.
This up on Waddy saying never forget sitting in Auburn with Hefner's first start. Ouch. Yeah, that was early on in the Steve Spurrier.
Never heard that name before just now.
You ever seen a team take a timeout before their first snap?
No, but I actually did see a video of Shea Patterson leading Michigan out on the field and getting a delay of game on the first snap of the game with 15 minutes still on the first quarter clock.
Very appropriate, seeing that we looked up those 2016 recruiting rankings with Shea Patterson, and he was number 1.
Yep.
In a class that now has 4 Gamecock quarterbacks attached to it. Wait, Jason Smith,
Jason Brown?
Jason Brown would be the class of 2017, maybe? Because he's technically a redshirt senior, I think. We got to look him up, too. I don't think he can get in that class of 2016. But
2017, yeah. 2017.
Okay.
103rd rated pro-style quarterback.
And that goes back to, I guess, the question that I was trying to answer on the text line there from the anonymous sector. Will someone please tell me what's wrong with Jason Brown as a starter, period? Well, what's wrong is that he hadn't won the job, and that Luke Doty was clearly named the starting quarterback in spring, and they told Jason Brown to lose some weight. He did that. He's a little bit more mobile, but that's why it's going to be wildly interesting to hear from Shane Beamer tomorrow what they're doing with the quarterback position moving forward. Because especially with a team that's lost 8 games each of its last 2 seasons, and knowing the strong leader that Luke Doty is, not just being their starting quarterback, but the personality he has. You go ahead and name a guy in case Luke Doty can't get there to do what it sounded like Marcus Satterfield wants to do and say, hey, this is our first team guy, man. We're going to start preparing like he's our starting quarterback. If Luke comes back to practice and shows us that he's healthy enough to take it back over, then he's going to be the guy. Otherwise, it's going to be either Jason Brown or Zeb Nolan. To me, I think that's where they're going to go tomorrow. Shane Beamer is going to come out and say, hey, here's our guy. Here's who has proven to us to this point that he is the best quarterback that we have. We're going to rally around him to start getting his offense geared up for at least that first game. Because it sounded to me, when you hear ASAP, as soon as possible, that's when you want a starting quarterback named by your offensive coordinator. That sounds like what Marcus Satterfield wants to do with his offense and needs to do with his offense moving forward. The crazy question, of course, is who that's going to be. Jason Brown or Zeb Nolan at this point. Either way, it's a tremendous story. And maybe that's what we should stress this morning. A tremendous story. The fact that it didn't work out for Colin Hill last year probably has those of us who follow Gamecock football a little jaded that happy endings are really tough to find in these stories. And that there hasn't been a happy ending for such highly recruited guys. How many guys are we going through now? We'll throw Lorenzo Nunez in the mix with McElwain, Bentley, Olinsky, Connor Mitch. Who else are we missing outside those five? We'll just go with those five right now.
Good for right now.
It hasn't worked out for those five highly recruited guys. It didn't work out for Colin Hill, who wasn't nearly as highly recruited and was going with more the underdog story, coming back to his home state from Colorado State. But that being an FBS program where you had plenty of experience, plenty of production, and now you get FCS guys hopping up a level, looking to prove that they can play the highest level of college football. But again, you're not wanting to hear any kind of doom and gloom, especially for game number one. It's Eastern Illinois. That is a silver lining for Gamecock fans in a lot of ways. A team that has struggled in the last couple of years, 2 wins combined in the last 2 seasons on the FCS level. So then the question becomes, all right, in game number one, it's almost like a bit of a tryout for just in case moving forward. And then where is Luke Doty from a health standpoint if it's not Luke Doty? And then Ferrari, classic Gamecock fan comment, I feel like, I think we should have waited for Gunnar Stockton. We even waited for him.
He's at Georgia right now.
And it's always been that next guy. I mean, those 5 names that I mentioned, it was always that guy in our conversation.
I don't even know what waited for Gunnar Stockton means. Does that mean shouldn't have fired Muschamp in the hopes that they held on to
Right.
Gunnar Stockton?
One high school quarterback to change the entire program. Whew. That look that Jen just gave on the video stream needs to be, we need to make that one a screenshot for sure. 803-404-6100 if you would like to get in a final word here at a conclusion of show number 1 this week, where we're 12 days away from Gamecock football kicking off. That's coming up next here. It's the early game, 7-5. And what a time to talk Gamecock football and get ready for the season. And talking about timing, the housing market right now. And I just went over to some friends who had recently bought a house. They're doing renovation and the whole thing. It made me glad I'm not exactly in that process, but certainly have explored my options recently. I suggest you explore your options with Beaufort Lending. What Benji Getzi and his team, his experienced team of almost 25 years in the mortgage industry showed me is that Beaufort Lending is a lender that you can trust. And the numbers they showed me, absolutely astounding to kind of the buying power that my family could have right now. I'm guessing yours could come up with similar numbers, and Benji would do the exact same thing for you. No, he would, no matter what your position is right now, whether you're looking to refinance, you're looking at VA, FHA, USDA loans, conventional construction or renovation loan. Maybe you're looking into buying a second house. Benji's been through all of that before and then some, and that experience is why he and his team can find you the best deal out there. It's why I encourage you to give Beaufort Lending and Benji Getzi a call. Again, that number, 843-524-2404.
Colin Hill is no longer with Cincinnati. Travis. Tim, do you know that we have the timeout function?
No, what is a timeout function?
I just figured out if you go to the hover over the message and hit the three
Oh, yeah.
dots. you
I have
can
seen that.
block.
Do that to our friend that we hadn't seen before on the live chat. You guys
Yeah.
for him?
Yeah, because I have our stream up on one of my TVs, just because I want to see what it looks like, and those comments are just like sitting on the screen while we're talking for a good 20 seconds. So yeah, we got to get rid of those immediately if they're not about sports.
Good call. And that was 1989, I believe, buddy. Travis, that's the answer to your question. But Anthony,
Yeah, we've talked about this a bunch of times. It's as bad as any. Their NFL lineage is as bad as any Power 5 school in America, basically. I mean, come on, Mark.
Mark.
Who's the first quarterback that comes to mind when you think of Rutgers?
Rutgers?
Yeah.
Really?
Mine is Chase Dodd, just because he's Bobby Bentley's stepson, I think. Or adopted son, I think it was. What you got? You got nothing, just because they are the program in Power 5 football on the same.
Yeah, pretty much equal to how awful South Carolina's history has been. Although they for sure had a QB drafted more recently than South Carolina has.
Who?
When was Tyler drafted?
89, I think.
Yeah, so they had Mike Teal drafted in 2009 and Mike McMahon drafted in 2001. And that's it. It's all the drafted players from Rutgers, and it shows the positions, but their first draft picks, it says position B, C, B, 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 C, B, E, B.
Weird.
Back end and center. I don't really know what those positions are. Mike wasn't Teal with Rice, like Rice University.
No, with Ray Rice.
Oh, probably 2009. That sounds right. Kenny Britt was on that team too, and the McCourty brothers, and Taekwon Underwood. That was actually probably a pretty darn good team.
Well, not probably at all. That basically got their coach job in the NFL. Why can't I remember his name off the top of my head? Because I'm a dummy.
Schiano,
Yeah, Greg Schiano.
and he's back.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, Ray Rice was drafted in 2008. Mike Teal was the next year. I know Kenny Britt was a good player. He was a first-round pick.
I remember watching that at the time and being just amazed that Rutgers was a legit college football team.
You know, they actually have some decent NFL players. Kamoko Toure is a decent little player for the Colts. Tyler Kroft is not good, but he is an NFL tight end. Kasim Green, Logan Ryan won Super Bowls with the Patriots. Mohamed Sanu has been traded for a second-round pick very recently, even though he's not good anymore. And the McCourty brothers.
We're heading back in.
Thank you.
You're up.
Got a chance for you to have quite an experience. If you'd like to fly to Miami, hop aboard the Chris Jericho's Rockin' Rager at Sea triple whammy on a 5-day adventure to Grand Bahama Island. Got live band performances, wrestling guys, autograph sessions, live podcasts, and more. You just text the national keyword right now, Chris, as in the name Chris, CHRIS, to 64636 to enter your chance to win. That's the national keyword Chris. Text that to 64636 right now for your chance to win. That.
It was a big weekend in wrestling. I saw that CM Punk is back, Brock Lesnar's back, Becky Lynch is back. Saw this on Twitter. Didn't watch any of it, but I've heard of all three of them. They're all back.
Interesting to get some of these final comments in on the Gamecock quarterback situation as it pertains to Dakereon Joyner, especially because Joyner's still on the roster. I take it as an actual good sign that Shane Beamer hasn't made the move to take Dakereon Joyner and put him back as full-time quarterback. So that's unfair to him, and it seems like he is on the cusp of becoming a solid contributor at wide receiver, which we all know if you watched last year, the Gamecocks be desperate. Anthony says USC doesn't deserve better at the quarterbacking position. They had Dakereon Joyner at quarterback and neglected to give him a fair chance. He's the typical Connor Shaw, and even now, he's the best quarterback. Matt said on Twitter, seeing a lot about Joyner is finally getting his moment and is the guy, but didn't state exactly what that means. Other rumors is he's taking snaps, but is still a wide receiver. Any idea? Do they even know what they want from him? Well, I know what we've heard from Shane Beamer is he got out in front of it as soon as Luke Doty was injured. Said, yes, Dakereon Joyner is taking snaps at quarterback, but he's spending 97% of his time at wide receiver, which I think is the right move here. Because Dakereon Joyner talked on Media Day a couple of weeks ago about how his dream didn't come true. It was his dream to be a quarterback at South Carolina and in the SEC and major college football, and that one didn't come true. And it seems to me like that kind of died when Ryan Helinski beat him out for the backup quarterback spot a couple of years ago, going into that season opener, where I was shocked to see Dakereon Joyner. I think it was 10 days or maybe less after this announcement had been made and he switched over to wide receiver, seeing him on the field. It was within the first few plays. So I expected him to be a consistent contributor, a solid contributor at the wide receiver position. That hasn't happened for whatever reason, but the narrative out of preseason practice this year is that Dakereon Joyner has been very impressive out there and will be able to contribute this season. So to me, it's the panic button and then some if you take him and you move him back to quarterback. I mean, you can argue it's a bit of a panic button taking a graduate assistant and putting him at quarterback as well.
Of course you can argue. I mean, it's a lot more common for a quarterback to move to wide receiver quarterback to move to wide receiver and be really successful. Just looking through all these quarterback rankings, it was the weird thing in the Lamar Jackson ranking that was notable was that Jawan Jennings was a higher rated high school quarterback than Lamar Jackson ended up being a wide receiver drafted to the Buccaneers. And David Sills from West Virginia was also a highly rated quarterback in that class who ended up being a wide receiver. And it happens all the time. So that is actually kind of normal. The grad assistant thing is completely uncharted territory that South Carolina is entering right now.
And again, never know what happens in a season. Troy asked the hypothetical, if Doty's injury was season-ending, do y'all think they would move Joyner to quarterback? And who knows if that could happen down the line if you're not getting production at the position and you still think that you have a chance with a guy that did it really, really well in high school, but has it. And I take issue to the phrasing of never got his chance. He definitely got his chance in practice. I guess I get it if you think he never got his chance in games. But we've seen Dakereon Joyner take snaps as a quarterback at the University of South Carolina. That's more than Jason Brown can say right now. It's more than Zola can say right now. It's more than Colton Gauthier can say right now. And if Luke Doty doesn't play in game number 1 because of that midfoot sprain, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens at quarterback. Going to be fascinating even if he does play, but that much more fascinating because these stories for both Brown and Nolan are pretty incredible in their own ways. Enjoy the conversation this morning. Patrick, well done, sir. What do you take away from today?
That Wes got us all hyped up on Gamecock Central for something that's inevitably going to be a nothing burger.
I don't think so. I think
He can't
think it's
start. It can't happen.
really how dare you.
Not in
It
my
sounds like
mind.
you're a doom and gloom guy. That's what it sounds like to me.
I'm just a denier.
15.
I
What's
don't
that?
think
What's that, Jen? Shane Beamer on line 1 for Patrick?
Yep.
Too bad we
Take it
ran
off
out
here.
of time.
Sorry.
Dan Patrick show coming up next year. I'm gonna say that. Oh, Waddy with the party shot called for. We got the opposite on the text line from my personal nemesis who said we really needed Gunter today.
Yeah, I wanted him today too because guess who won the race yesterday?
Good for you, Jen. Congratulations. You can rub it in on
I didn't
Thursday.
show up.
Yeah, trust me, Wednesday won't come too soon.
If he won the race, he would have called in.
Oh, he would have. He would have been a complete pork chop.
Nice. Enjoy the Braves game, Mark.
That'd be fun.
Travis, you too, Hope.
I'm about to take my leftover dirty rice from Bojangles and scramble an egg in it. There's no way that's not going to be delicious. I've never done it before, but I'm very confident this is going to be good.
I would
Enjoy.
think that would be.
I am about to go pull my hair out in multiple ways. Virtual schooling of 8-year-old and 6-year-old and a 16-month-old who hasn't been very happy this morning.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Is it he's not happy because his brothers are home?
Who knows? Who knows?
Wow, that sounds like more fun.
Alan, you guys have a good day. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. If I can push the right button.